Walking through the rain, he gloomily wonders if the weather itself hates him. Suddenly, the image of his party leader, who decisively ordered him to leave, emerges in his memory. The scene suddenly shifts us to a simple rural tavern where he sits opposite his leader. Sitting over a half-empty mug, he quietly asked, "Why was I fired?" The leader, a man in glasses, looks away and remains silent. Finally, the leader tells Alvin that he already knows the reason, and it leaves him broken. Returning to the present, Alvin wanders through the dark forest and asks himself about his fate. Under the hood, his tired face framed by leaves, he walks on. Ahead, suddenly through the darkness of the forest, a dazzling beam of light cut through. He covers his eyes with his hand, and his facial expression changes from tired to alert curiosity. Before him stood a giant stone gate, the entrance to a dungeon, strangely abandoned. He took off his glove and concluded, people are scared off by some widespread rumor. A holographic status screen appears. He realizes the recklessness of his plan. He looked into the backpack and noted with relief, elixirs, food, and spare equipment all in place. Clenching his fist, he strengthens his resolve to enter. He stands as a tiny figure at the entrance and sees in it the only way forward. A powerful low-angle shot shows his determination to face the dungeon boss alone. He takes one last calm breath and steps into the darkness. Barely crossing the threshold, he sees carved text on the wall, a quiet story about an old man. The words made him think, but he knows there is no time to delay. He steps onto the first floor of the Sunset Cave. The overlay shows his stats activating strength and agility instantly spike inside. A bony hand bursts upward as he bitterly realizes his helplessness outside the dungeons. A horde of skeletons erupts from the stone floor and rushes at him. A confident smile blooms on his face. Here he is in his element. He delivers a powerful wide sword strike against the undead. On the 11th floor, among the remains of fallen enemies, his status flickers level 43. On the middle floor, the ground is strewn with fallen lizard-like monsters. He thinks about all his combat skills. There are so many, and they give him an advantage. He thinks he is the perfect, talented vanguard for any team. He demonstrates his power with an attack that causes a series of explosions. Reaching the 17th floor, he admitted, despite his talent, there is one serious problem. A viscous sound echoes, and he recognizes his next monstrous opponent. He is face to face with a giant paralyzing slime, and hope for a pile of coins flickers in his chest. On the diagram, his plan comes alive to lure the slime onto the bait and expose its core. The slime lunges forward, its body stretching into a thin thread and revealing its weak spot. He grabs the chance with a precise and powerful strike. He cleaves the core. He stands confidently in the middle of a puddle where the defeated slime slowly dissolves. He turns around to check if there are any drops, but the cave floor turns out to be completely empty. A close-up of his eye reveals shock. There is no loot. A memory in the tavern reveals the truth. Because of this major flaw, he was fired. Upset, Elvin sits at the table in the tavern and slowly processes the painful news. He insists that his high level and many skills should be his trump card. His former leader looked fiercely, as if doubting whether Albin had the right to be proud of his skills. He angrily demands from Elvin, "Open your status screen and look at the skill list." On Albin's screen flashed, the cursed skill drop rate X, it reduces drops by 80. The leader with a bitter smile explains that this negative skill is the price for his other abilities. The infographic shows that for one drop, he will have to kill a whole mountain of monsters. The text states that his active participation cripples the party's overall income. Returning to the present, he finally understood why everyone wants to expel him. A close-up of his sad face, he quietly sinks into memories. Before him flashed a warm memory of his happy childhood with his family. He remembers how at 14 he became an adventurer and had to grind alone to catch up. The memory shows him studying the monster's weak spots by candlelight at night. He remembers how incredibly hard he worked to support his various parties. Although he gave all his strength, in the end his comrades still abandoned him. He ran his hand through his hair with a feeling of disappointment. No matter how much he worked, it was never enough. Depressed, he bowed his head in complete despair and exhaled a long, tired sigh. Later, he walks alone through the crystal cave, fervently wishing that only hard work mattered. A sudden piercing scream shattered the silence and pulled him out of his thoughts. He instantly understands this is a human's scream, not a monster's. Seeing a dim light ahead, he rushed towards the commotion. He finds a chaotic battle, someone surrounded by a horde of creatures. A close-up shows that the yellow-skinned monsters are aggressive ochre goblins. He looks at the large group and sees in it a potential threat to any adventurer. His hand involuntarily reaches for the sword hilt, preparing to intervene. He bursts into the fight, a blurred silhouette against the backdrop of chaos. He froze, seeing a lone priest desperately fighting a horde of goblins. He urgently asks the priestess if she can still move, and if she has even a drop of magic left. He asks her to stand up, promising to help her get back into a defensive position. The priestess, bowing her head, sincerely apologizes for causing him trouble. He looked at her gently and reassured her, "Don't worry." He smiles warmly and says that it is quite natural when adventures stick together. His unexpected kindness confuses her, and a deep blush slowly spreads across her cheeks. He orders her, "First heal yourself, then take care of your own protection." His face stiffened. It is clear that he worries about her missing comrades. He rushed into the ranks of goblins, ready to clear the way for her. The sword flashed and cleanly cut through one of the goblins. He slaps another goblin with the flat side of the blade. The goblin freezes, stunned. The third goblin is cut down with cruel, honed efficiency. Suddenly, a thrown spear flew from a high cliff, whistling through the air. He skillfully parries the projectile, and his sword sharply clanged. A magical rune flared as he deflected the spear, it safely embedded into the ground. The remaining goblins fall upon him, trying to overwhelm him with numbers. Laughing at their tactics, he unleashes a powerful circular strike at them. He weaves between enemies, preparing to execute a powerful move. He grimly warns, "Do not underestimate the solo player," and instantly summons the skill Iron Cutter. He dashed forward and rushed past the goblin, who managed to break through his line. His skill cuts through the shield, and two goblins standing behind it. He sharply turns to warn the cleric that the last goblin is heading straight for her. He noticed that his items appear exactly at the moment. The cleric takes matters into her own hands. With a decisive cry, the priestess struck the goblin's head with all her might using her staff. She sighed with relief and proudly exclaimed that she was the one who defeated him. Her long blonde hair flows as she stands over the fallen monster. In the designated safe zone, swordsman Alvin and priest Kakaru introduced themselves. Resting on several crates, Alvin asked Kakaru why she was going on adventures alone. He gently asks if other members of her group died. Kokoru quickly shook her head and explained that her team was not destroyed. Sitting on a crate, Kokoru confesses with a quiet smile that she was alone from the very beginning. Alvin froze in complete shock and exclaimed that it was the first time in his life he had seen a cleric go through a dungeon alone. She explained that she did not find the team, and he could not help but ask whether her solitary attempt was reckless. Seriousness settled in her gazish is going to reveal the whole truth about her situation. Deciding that showing would be faster, she turns away from him, flicking her hair. He protests that adventurers usually do not show their stats, but she calmly insists that she does not care. His eye widens in complete disbelief as he begins to read the information on her status screen. Jumping back in surprise, he shouted, not believing, "Are you really level 80? He stammered, saying that she probably did not need his help, but she feverishly insisted that he helped her a lot. She diverts his attention from her level and says she wants him to look at her skill list instead. Browsing the list, Elvin is impressed by her 11 skills and praises her for having so many useful abilities. His gaze stopped at an unfamiliar skill, Decapitated Head of the Usurper, which he had never heard of before. With a gloomy look, she quietly admits, this is actually a negative skill. The phrase negative skill echoes in Albin's head, and a look of concern slowly appears on his face. She explains it is this ability that allowed her to reach such a high level. He puts the facts together and asks, is her level 80 a direct effect of that negative skill? Elvin noticed that the skill's effect seemed simple, and she confirmed his assessment. She begins to explain what its main function is. She receives credit for any monster killed by a party member. He asked if the one who actually killed still receives drops and experience, and she confirmed that yes. With a worried expression on her face, she says the biggest problem is with the kill bonus. Suddenly, a flash of understanding appeared on Albin's face as this new information sank in. He suddenly realizes her ability allows her to take all the juicy bonus experience points for herself. The infographic shows how all the valuable bonus experience seemed to flow straight to her through a pipe, while her party comrades received much less. The diagram shows that the swordsman and the mage receive no bonus experience, and all of it goes to the cleric. She explains that because of this, her team levels up more slowly, so he concludes that she was kicked out of the group. He suggests she join a group that collects items. Instead of leveling up this way, the problem can be avoided. Her face darkened as she began to explain that, unfortunately, there is another problem. She unexpectedly admits that her skill has another drawback, and Alvin was stunned. With a pained expression, she explains that useful skills of other members, such as experience bonuses, do not work here. The diagram clearly shows how her skill makes the mage's skill, which increases the chance of item drops, completely ineffective. She concludes that her skill not only steals extrasensory abilities, but also blocks useful skills, and she considers this terrible. Alvin froze speechless. He wanted so much to comfort her, but the right words could not be found. She apologizes for dumping all this on him, but he seemed lost in his own thoughts. Her face is downcast, and she continues to explain the real reason for her being in the dungeon. Standing before the dark entrance to the cave, she whispered a rumor about an item that drops from the boss and can erase skills. She admits that she came precisely for this, but now fears that handling the boss alone is impossible, and Alvin remains confused. Suddenly it struck Alvin's mind, skills like increased drop chance do not work on this boss. Grabbing his face, he wonders if his own skill X, which reduces drop chance, will also be cancelled. Kokiru tries to calm him, unaware of his inner revelation, saying that it's okay, they don't have to form a party. She desperately offers him all the other rewards, just to get that one item that erases skills. When Aurora's voice echoes from the cave, she shyly begins to ask if they could perhaps go in there together. Elvin's internal struggle explodes in an instant. He calls her name with passionate determination. He grabbed her by the shoulders and desperately asked to form a team, leaving her completely stunned. The action shifts deep into the ice crystal caves of the 17th floor of the dungeon. Now in the squad, Kokiru suggests fighting side by side each for themselves, but Elvin insists, let's try to act together. She asks if he needs any buffs, a simple phrase that shocks him with its soothing ordinariness. The word buffs spread warmth and a pleasant trembling through him, that feeling he had not felt for a very long time. Overwhelmed with emotions, tears well up in his eyes, realizes how wonderful it is to have an ally on the team again. His blessed dream is suddenly interrupted by Kokiru, who urgently calls him by name. At first he brushed off her warning, but she insisted, look ahead, danger is approaching there. In the ice cave, another paralyzing slime appeared before them, crawling towards them. When the slime stretches and clings to his boot, he feels, this is the perfect chance to test his theory. He jumped into the air, flew up, raised it high above his head, and let out a decisive shout. With an expression of incredible concentration, he shouts for his hypothesis to be confirmed, lowering the sword. Slime shatters, releasing an impressive and impossible rain of gold coins pouring around it. A close-up of his eye shows complete disbelief and admiring astonishment at this miracle. The mouth of Kokiru is like a gate, and a pure shock will not appear on the face from what just happened. She is delighted by his incredible skill and exclaims that he managed to kill the monster with one blow. Confused with a pounding heart, Elvin insists that one impressive fall proves nothing yet. A new threat appears from the shadows, crawls a group of ugly, roaring, ochre goblins. They are destroyed instantly, just like the slime they explode into clouds of smoke and dust. Instead, a vial that was with ochre goblin and a dote rolled and stopped on the cave floor. Kokiru carefully examines the rare virus, while Albin, without looking away from the experiment, gazes at the screen with his status. He insists that he needs a test theory again to be sure. Close-up of a hairy creature, with many eyes, a sign that another wave of monsters is approaching. A swarm of electro spiders breaks off from the ceiling, crackling with sparks, and Elvin stands ready to fight. After the battle, he holds a glowing lightning sphere, and Kokiru praises him for always having good drops. Her innocent remark instantly throws him into a panic. Is it even possible to ask any questions if he really gets lucky with drops? Kokiru is confused by that strange tension and wonders why he phrased it as a question. Worried that he is annoying her, he rushed to her and shouted her name once again in a burst of frantic energy. He invades her personal space, desperately asking for the second time to assemble the team. She calmly reminds him that they are already together at the party, and he awkwardly agrees. He begs her to join him, and his behavior changes. Instead of fuss, deep sincerity comes. With deep seriousness, he passionately and dramatically begs that they be together forever. Her eyes widen, her cheeks blush. She completely misunderstood his desperate plea as a sudden confession of love. He shouts that he cannot imagine his life without her, and she protests. They have just met. He is sure that their meeting is fate, and she is shocked by how persistent he is. She grips her staff, stammering that she still barely knows him. Suddenly, he remembers a very important thing he completely forgot to say. Leaning closer, he whispers his secret. He also has a negative skill. He calls up his status on the screen and explains that his skill, unlike hers, is not rare at all. The screen explodes with dark energy and highlights his curse skill. The drop chance has fallen to extremely low. Kokiru was caught by surprise, arguing that extremes are still incredibly rare, and asks how he even managed to survive as an adventurer. He admits that because of this, he was just kicked out of his party. Suddenly it becomes clear to her. He came to this cave for the same reason as she did, and he confirms her suspicion. She, the severed head of the usurper, asks why he received ordinary drops, and he triumphantly says that it is her ability. She is shocked, realizing that her own problematic ability became the cause of his luck. He bitterly confirms that her ability deprives him of all bonuses for killing monsters. He adds that it also completely cancels all the skills of his comrades that increase the chance of item drops. With a grim expression on his face, he says that he does not want to cause people more trouble than necessary. In Kokiru's eyes, a light of understanding suddenly shone. All the pieces of the puzzle finally came together. She understands if his ability nullifies others, then this must mean. A flash of light emphasized his victorious confirmation of her unspoken thought. He beamed with a smile and explained that his negative skill did not work, so he can act as a normal swordsman. Kokiru digests this discovery and quietly mutters that everything is just a matter of perspective and that she has just realized this. She finally understood his proposal to be together forever, and he enthusiastically confirms that he wants to remain apart. The memory of her romantic misunderstanding surged again. She instantly blushed and felt incredible shame. Elvin notices her strange mood and asks what is wrong, but she quickly assures that everything is fine. She turns away, covers her mouth, and quietly giggles as if she knows something. She sincerely and gently smiles and admits that she is glad her troublesome skill turned out to be so useful. A swordsman named Elvin looks on, his face thoughtful and gloomy. He quietly tells his companion that he understands her hesitation. His skill has brought trouble more than once. Kokiru, the priest, stands silently and listens attentively to his warning. Closing her eyes, she quietly asks to at least temporarily remain in the same party. Two clasped hands solemnly agree to work together on their shared adventure. Now on the 24th floor, Elvin delivers a powerful downward strike on the tentacled monster. He stands triumphantly among the fallen creatures and sighs with relief. Alvin's reflection is displayed on the status screen as he checks his stats after the battle. Blushing with joy, he looks with admiration at how his inventory is completely full. He turns to Kokiru and, happily excited, asks her to help collect all the dropped items. Kokiru agrees with a bright smile, and Alvin mentally admires her and her skills. As they walk, Alvin thinks about what a rare and valuable friend she is. Kakaro's face became gloomy and depressed as she walked a few steps behind him. Noticing that her mood had changed, Alvin asked himself, is she tired or sad? Worried about his new companion, he turned around and offered to take a break. His offer shocked her. She insisted that she was fine and could definitely continue. Alvin stands right in front of her and calls her by name to get her full attention. He leans toward her, with desperation in his voice, promising to fix whatever is troubling her. Confused by his pressure, she suddenly wonders, is something really bothering her? Suddenly, she is pierced by realization. An insistent thought surfaces in her memory. She asks Alvin if he has any special sword, because he is able to kill with one strike. Alvin paused for a moment, carefully considering her question. Drawing his weapon, he assures her that it is just an ordinary sword. He explains, you hit the weak spots, and with her buff, monsters are easily taken down with one strike. Kokiru blushed slightly from his compliment, still unable to comprehend his incredible skill. She insists that killing every monster with one shot is still a crazy feat. Alvin's smile becomes wistful as he admits that he studied hard to avoid dragging others down. He confesses that he wanted to show her how cool he is to keep his new friend. His sincere words stunned Koru, her face completely blank, without any expression. When they come across something suspicious, Kagru muttered anxiously, not again. Close-up shows Alvin's eye. His gaze is focused on the new discovery ahead. Kokiru notices a shiny object in the dead-end cave and asks, what is this? They come across a decorated chest. She fears it is a mimic, but he, without hesitation, decisively prepares to open it. Alvin asks her to stay aside, hoping she will heal him if it turns out to be a trap. He thinks about what a relief it is to have a healer in the dungeon. He lifts the heavy lid with a loud creak, and inside lies a single scroll. Unfolding it, he holds his breath. It confirms the rumors about an item called skill erasing. He recalls that this was his first goal before his own negative skill was reset. Kokiru looks at him with a serious and knowing gaze, feeling the full weight of this discovery. She gently calls him by name, pulling his gaze away from the scroll. Alvin turned to her, a question in his eyes. What do you want to tell me? With a selfless smile, she hands him an item that only one person can use. Alvin froze. Her sudden and generous offer simply stunned him. He asked in surprise why she suddenly started talking about such a thing out of nowhere. She says simply and sincerely she wants to thank him for having saved her life earlier. Finally, he realized that was the reason for her earlier gloomy expression. Alvin agreed with her assumption that the matter might be one time, but he suggests another way out instead. It just needs to be sold. Kokuru froze in silence, stunned. Why did he suggest that? He sincerely explains, experience glasses are not important, he needs something completely different from a comrade. He tells her that with her by his side, he can cope with his negative skill. She thanks him for his sincerity, but doubts whether his feelings will hold up. She grips the staff handle, preparing to voice her deeper concern. She warns him if his efforts do not bring tangible rewards, his dissatisfaction will only grow. With deep sorrow born of experience, she understands that's always how it is. Her insight suddenly evokes in memory the advice of an old man about negative skills. Finally, he understood how they sow bad feelings in heart's envy and suspicion. The memory merges with the present, and he gradually realizes how many emotions it took. A series of shots shows his past struggles, and his face contorts with anxiety and irritation. He realized that he probably had the same grimace of pain as Kokuru now has on her face. He stops from time to time and calls her by name to attract her attention. Kokuru lowers her eyes. Doubt and sadness are still readable on her face. He tells her that he wants her to hear something from a fellow adventurer. Kneeling on one knee, he solemnly and sincerely promised never to betray her. Stunned by his powerful vow, Kokuru could only freeze and watch, her eyes filled with tears. After his words, a deep silence froze between them. Alvin immediately panics, anxiously thinking, did he talk too much about his needs? He quickly suggests worrying about the details only after the thing is in their hands. Kokuru smiled gently and reassuringly and agreed that it was a good idea. Alvin stands up and apologizes for saying something strange, but she waved it off and said don't worry. He agrees with a slight smile, the tension between them now completely dissipated. She asked if they should go further, and they turned and walked side by side. Walking along the path, their hands swayed so close that they almost touched. Kokuru thinks to herself that Alvin is a truly honest person. In her head, a memory of their meeting instantly flashes. He appears as a good-natured traveler. She remembers how he suddenly appeared in the dungeon and was already at a high level. She recalls how, without hesitation, she openly told him about her negative skill. Part of her believes that their meeting has already been erased, but a more cynical part rejects this optimistic idea as too convenient. She understands that he wants to work with her because they share a common burden. He needs a person with a negative skill because he is in the same situation. She sadly admits there are no guarantees he might eventually change his mind. A threatening smile flashed in her imagination, twisting his promise never to betray her. Her fragile hope shatters against the burden of past experiences and betrayals. Meanwhile, Alvin walks ahead, full of hope that she will be fine. A loud bang broke the silence, and Kokuru's eyes suddenly opened wide with anxiety. Alvin recognizes the sound of battle, while Kokuru anxiously calls his name. He feels that something is wrong here when Morax breaks off from the canyon walls. He instantly decides, apologizes, and urgently asks her to follow him. She agrees without hesitation, and they both rush to run toward the noise. Their boots raise clouds of dust as they rush to the source of the commotion. They arrive and find themselves in the midst of yet another adventure in the middle of a desperate struggle. The explosion confirms how fierce this battle is as they assess the situation. Ahead is a narrow passage filled with a huge horde of emerald golems. Kokuru prepares to cast a buff, while Alvin resolutely declares that he will draw their attention. He rushed forward, his sword struck a colossal stone fist with a deafening dull thud. He let out a groan of pain, the force of the powerful blow shook him. His hands trembled from the impact, and he realized how tough this fight would be. He smiles broadly and announces that he has captured the monster's attention and is already ready for its buff. Hikaru boasts of her lightning-fast thinking, knowing she won't be able to use the Longchand. Kokuru carefully analyzes the situation and understands, to defeat so many golems, a completely different strategy is needed. She clearly feels another, much more powerful buff will help more than a simple strength enhancement. Believing in Alvin's high level of skill, she is convinced that her plan will succeed. With a determined expression, she sincerely declares that she strives with all her might to enhance his abilities. A bright flash of light envelops Alvin, and he is stunned by the powerful boost he has just received. He cannot believe his eyes when a message about penetrating physical resistance appears in his field of vision. Leaping high into the air, Elvin brings his sword down directly on the golem's weak spot. His blade pierces the creature right in the heart, and cracks creep across its stone body like a spiderweb. With the final devastating blow, the entire golem shatters into a huge pile of fragments. He gracefully descends among the debris, and the battlefield momentarily freezes at this display of power. Impressed, he says that the buff will save them a lot of time in this battle. Turning back to his comrade, he enthusiastically praised Kakaru for a job well done. Kokuru thanks him in return, enthusiastically praising his incredible accuracy in hitting the golem's weak spot. Another explosion shook the canyon, and they anxiously turned their attention to the battle raging nearby. Another adventurer shouts to them, "Hold on a little longer while she fights." The rest of the golems avert their gaze from her and direct it at them. Elvin watches with surprise as the monsters suddenly change their target to his group. From afar, other adventurers shout that she can't hear them well. She continues her merciless attack, a whirlwind of movement and the rumble of stones. She shouts that it doesn't matter as long as they are all still alive. Inspired by her determination and filled with new strength, Alvin smiles with renewed resolve. Shouting "all right," he dashed back into the very heart of the battle. Two more colossal golems loom over him, their stone bodies blocking the sky. He becomes a blurred spot, zigzagging between the giants' powerful legs with masterful agility. He skillfully dodges their sweeping attacks, preparing for the next duel with the stone giants. Kokuru silently watches from afar, her staff at the ready, prepared to support. In the midst of broken stones, Albin asks if the battle is over, and Kakar confirms that he has won. He enthusiastically praises the power of her buff and asks how much magical energy she still has. He looks admiringly at her endurance and suggests that it is probably an advantage of her incredibly high level. Kokuru giggles cheerfully, his cheeks rosy. It is clear that the compliments please him. He notices her good mood and thinks to himself that her level is not the most important thing. His gaze fell on the mage they saved, and he sighed with relief. The sorceress stands before them, her face serious and focused. She looks intently at those who saved her. She anxiously asks if the two of them really ventured alone into these dangerous depths. Embarrassed, she stammered that she seems to owe them an apology. Alvin and Kokuru froze in shock. Her unexpected words completely confused them. In a safe place, the mage explains how the narrow and winding passage causes golems to get stuck. She reveals her cunning plan, how to farm immobilized, valuable golems to earn money. Elvin apologizes for interfering with her plan, but she just waved it off, not worrying. He doesn't believe she ended up there by accident. He feels there is something more in her story. He instantly understood. If she was farming there, then she definitely aimed to defeat the boss. She denies it and passionately explains that a mage is not a class suited to handle powerful bosses alone. It seems Elvin accepts her explanation, although his face still shows a thoughtful and slightly skeptical expression. Her face hardened, and she finally swears to remove the boss to get rid of that negative skill. Alvin and Kokuru froze in shock. She suddenly and fervently confessed that she has a cursed ability. The page from Abyss Giri depicts in detail a common slime monster, a simple, almost fake-looking creature. Another note describes fierce skeletal warriors who usually lurk in dungeons and crypts. It turns out the paralyzed slime's weak spot is its core, which is exposed as soon as it stretches. The image shows a smaller salamander, a large and dangerous opponent with a powerful bite. Suddenly, a new adventurer, Melina, appears from the ledge and asks if they have formed a temporary group. Alvin explains their agreement, and Melina jokingly teases him for picking up girls in the dungeon. Coco returns to the sorceress, intending to ask her about her situation. The mage guessed correctly. Kokuru is interested in her negative ability. She pronounces the name of her skill, and this explains why she cannot join the group and must travel alone. Elvin asks about its effect and notes with interest that hearing about such abilities firsthand is very rare. She begins to explain and immediately says that the skill only works when she is in the party. The first effect is a powerful boost. Each team member receives 10 to their stats. But there is a downside. The assassin's stats drop by 3. Elvin does not believe that this exhausting debuff accumulates with each subsequent kill. He hastily estimated the strength of the debuffs. He was wrong, and she gently corrects his calculation. She clearly explains, the calculation is based on current, not base character stats. The visual diagram clearly shows how the debuff loses its strength with each kill. She adds, since the debuff fades over time, it is rarely an insurmountable obstacle. Alvin concludes that with such mechanics, this skill is not such a disaster. She categorically disagrees and says that it is the third effect of this skill that truly destroys the whole team. Alvin understood with surprise and a bit of confusion that this complex ability has another layer. The third effect steals the kill bonus right from under the nose of the one who dealt the final blow. The infographic vividly shows how experience points are redistributed among other team members. She throws an imaginary question to Alvin: how would a fighter act in this situation? He correctly guesses the fighter will do everything to kill monsters as rarely as possible. She confirms this creates a dangerous situation that can lead to fatal incidents during battle. In the memory, we see the company facing a giant snake, and she actively explains the basics of the health points mechanic. She explains, damage does not make you worse at actions, it only takes away health points. The snake crushes the warrior, and his HP rapidly drops to 0. HP of the warriors dropped to 0, their eyes darkened and became lifeless, and this meant their death. A full-page image painfully emphasizes, in this world, death is final, no resurrections. And again, a flashback. The team is heatedly arguing over who should deliver the monster's final blow. The delay proves fatal. The rear squad is broken through, while the mage needs time to cast the spell. She recalls how countless parties were ruined by the monster's desperate last attack. Eventually, she was kicked out of these parties every time, or she had to leave on her own. He understands her choice to act independently, and she agrees she couldn't live with guilt. She admits that going alone is still dangerous, so she set out to find the item whispered about in the dungeons. Alvin understands how dangerous her skill is, but he is still gnawed by doubt about this situation. Suddenly, he was struck by realization. The worst effect of this ability wouldn't affect him at all. He thinks about who in their current group will get the kills. Kokiru explains her strategy for earning money alone, and she radiates a powerful, determined aura. Melina looks and sadly realizes Kakaru will have to travel alone all the way to the boss fight. Suddenly, Kakaru breaks away from her serious expression and shouts with incredible force, "Melina." She grabs Melina by the shoulders and desperately begs her to join their group. She sternly warns Melina, if a swordsman like Alvin starts to hesitate, danger will await her. Before Melina could properly refuse, Kakaru suddenly suggests, "Let's try together temporarily." With an irritated blush, Melina finally yields to her relentless, passionate pleading. The newly formed trio steps onto the 24th tier of the Sunset Cave. Alvin, noticing that his stats have jumped by 10, eagerly asks what role he will be assigned in the new party. Melina thoughtfully weighs the constant bonus that will go to those in the group who do not participate in battles. Kakaru waved it off. Leveling up is not her priority right now. She clearly says their goal now is to take the kill bonus from the monsters. In the distance, the shadow of a monster emerges, and she shouts to the group that it is approaching. Alvin recognizes in the creature that emerges a grotesque and dangerous tentacle plant. Melina steps forward with cold confidence and declares that she will handle the monster herself. The resolute witch in a pointed hat begins to utter a spell, her staff shining brightly. Her companion Alvin froze in admiration. He is stunned by the incredible speed of her spells. The terrifying plant monster with tentacles rushes forward. Its tentacles wildly flail in the air. Releasing all her power, the witch unleashes a huge arc-shaped strike of pure magical energy. At the tip of the staff, hers or Nita's, a vortex of destructive force swirls. With a deafening roar, the spell exploded, and in a lightning flash completely destroyed the monster. Alvin was stunned and could not believe she killed it with one blow. He is unsettled by her power, so he asks the witch Melina, which element does she command? Calmly, she shows her mastery of 5 elements, all level 38 spells under her control. Cleric Kakoru screamed in shock, stunned by how Melina commands so many elements. Turned red with excitement, Kokiru explains how difficult it is to learn each mantra. Alvin recalls his former party leader, the one who only knew 3 elements. Suddenly, Kokiru was enlightened. He pointed to Melina's incredible memory. On Melina's status screen, 5 skills enhancing the elements are visible, among them the sinister blessing of the jealous god. During a joking moment, Kokiru smiles and admits that he deeply respects Melina's dedication. Alvin could not stop thinking about the incredible effort Melina must have put into her solo. Suddenly remembering his experiment, Kokiru exclaims, "We need to check the team's stats." She summons the holographic status screen and carefully searches for signs of Melina's skill in action. Her finger points to a strange icon, a molten heart, a debuff she had never seen before. Melina explains, it is the curse of the jealous god, it is on her because she got the kill. Kokiru and Alvin look at the screen, their faces are blank, both equally confused. She confirms the curse reduces all her stats by 3. Melina froze in confusion. She realized that the debuff did not affect her. Without hesitation, Kakaru suggests they kill another monster to check it again. As if on command, a huge emerald golem approaches from the dark passage ahead. Alvin instantly assesses the threat and notes, this enemy is too strong for the rear. Resolutely, he declared that he would deal with the golem himself. He rushed forward, sword at the ready, prepared to engage in battle with the hawking creature. Before his attack could land, a burst of magic struck the golem's arm. Alvin immediately understands. This timely intervention is magic cover fire from his comrade. The powerful spell stuns the golem, it staggers, its attack falters. Seizing the opening, Alvin prepares to unleash his attack thrasher. A flash of light and his powerful sweeping attack begins. In a thrilling spectacle, his blade cleanly sliced through the golem's torso. He looks at the huge destruction and with surprise realizes one strike was enough to finish this. Melina gives him a compliment, suggesting that he too is a high-level adventurer. The group gathers together again. They turn their attention back to their ongoing experiment. Alvin returned to Kokyuru and tensely asked about the state of the debuff. She looks at the status screen, not believing her eyes, and exclaims that she did not receive it. With a sudden whirl of movement, Kokyuru grabbed Melina, begging her to join their team. Realizing she was wrong, Kokoryu blushes and stammers, saying she meant something else. A gentle hand reaches out, a light sweep cuts through the air. In a haze of sparks, Kakaru holds Melina's face and asks her to be with them forever. Melina blushes with embarrassment at the unexpected proposal and notes that they are both women. Kokyuru was overwhelmed by a wave of horror when she realized she made the same mistake as Alvin. She quickly explains that she wants Melina to stay with them forever. Melina looks back, her face unreadable as she considers the proposal. Her face flushes deeply as the weight of the moment sinks in. After a moment, she clears her throat and composes herself again. She reminds them of her situation and plainly states that she cannot participate in the party. Coco turns to Elvin and asks if he minds her taking care of the Grease. Honestly, Elvin admits he and Coco also have negative skills. The camera slowly glides over the rocky cave landscape, entwined with vines. Melina's thoughts raced, linked Kakoro's high level with her skill, decapitated usurper's head. She clearly understands Elvin's low level is also a result of his own negative skill. Suddenly it dawns on everyone, they are all in the dungeon for the same reason. She appreciates their offer, but insists she will do things her own way. Kokyuru looks up at her and explains that their offer is not out of pity. She persistently orders Melina, first check your own stats and then the team's stats. A holographic screen appears in the air. It displays information about Melina. Melina stares froze in shock. She realized that her status does not have the curse of the jealous god. She exclaims in complete disbelief and asks what is going on here. She tilted her head, embarrassed, trying to comprehend this unusual phenomenon. The team status screen mercilessly shows Kokoro is afflicted by 2 accumulations of the curse. Kakaru nudges Melina and asks if she remembers what her own negative skill does. Melina recalled Kokoru's ability counts every kill made by a party member for her. Kakaru explains this means that she always takes all the glory for the kills herself. An intricate diagram vividly shows their complex synergy and how the rewards are redistributed. Melina quietly makes a sound of understanding, and everything begins to fall into place. She says that Kakaru will never get a bonus again, but he doesn't care. Turning to Elvin, Melina asked what he thought about this plan. Elvin explains he prefers it this way because murders are never the work of one person. Melina observes, and a slight anxiety still plays on her face. She raises her hand and realizes they forgot one critical detail. She notes that Kokoro will have to take all the accumulated debuffs on herself. Kokyuru is not worried at all. A usual calm confidence is on her face. She pulls out her trump card. She will simply use the cleansing spell and they will be gone. Melina instantly cuts her off, pointing out serious flaws in this spell. She insists this spell removes buffs, but its chant lasts too long to be practical. Kokyuru smiles, reminding Melina that her level 80 stats can easily handle the debuffs. Irritated, Melina demands to know why Kokyuru agreed to such a disadvantage. Hikaru grows somber and admits she does not want to steal someone else's hard work. She confesses with bitter shame, only she rose to the level, although they all put in effort. Her face lit up with a bright, joyful smile, and she confidently says that the debuff is nothing compared to this. Melina froze, speechless and completely disarmed by Kakar's sincere, selfless conviction. Elvin calls Melina's name, ready to make his last request. He advises her to stay with her group for a short time. It will be safer that way. He smiled warmly and encouragingly and asked her about the final decision. After a thoughtful pause, Melina closes her eyes and agrees with a simple okay. She opens her eyes and adds that although it is temporary, she looks forward to the opportunity to work with them. Kokuru bursts with joy, grabbing Melina's hands with all his might and infecting her with his enthusiasm. Alvin smiles warmly and makes it clear that he feels the same. Their new partnership begins right on the 32nd floor of the Western Sun Cave. The battle is a furious whirlwind of actions, and Alvin is at the forefront against a huge golem. He crunches his fingers, smiling confidently ready for battle. He shouted that he did not notice the little creature that was asking for help. A lively frog-like monster jumped past him and rushed to the back line. Melina's slender fingers gently traced the runes on her staff, preparing a spell. She stands ready, and the lizard-like monster recoils from an invisible force. Wiping sweat from his forehead with relief, Alvin accepts praise from grateful companions. On the cave floor, among scattered coins, a unique gem sparkles in the shape of a drop. A gloved hand lifts the shimmering gem, and its owner notices this wonder with interested surprise. Kokuru, shining with delight, recognized the item as a rare mermaid's tear and praised Elvin's luck. Holding the precious stone, Elvin quietly realized how rare it was and sank into thoughtful silence. He extends the thing to Melina. She recoils in shock and protests it is too valuable a gift. Elvin calmly explains, "This is simply payment for the kills she previously lured, and we are on Admiral Vom's team." In Melina's memory, she is surrounded by emerald golems, and she vows to destroy as many as possible. The memory continues. She screams in despair as the golems cover her. Returning to the present, Melina lowered her eyes and quietly whispered that she understood his kind gesture. Elvin insists that she take it, but Melina gently refuses and asks him to keep it for himself. She explains, accepting it means admitting that his heroic rescue of her was a mistake. Melina felt that his actions were right and could have saved her from fatal hesitation in the future. Her amazingly logical and thoughtful reasoning leaves Elvin speechless for a moment. Realizing she is right, Elvin agrees with her decision to refuse the precious stone. Melina shuddered, embarrassed by his assessment that she was too logical. Elvin was confused, blushed, and hurriedly tried to explain that he did not mean to offend anyone at all. Seeing her reaction, Coco Ragigs noticed that Melina was worried about how she was perceived. To change the subject, Melina loudly exclaimed, "Let's move on." Reaching the waterfall, Elvin notices the stunning depth of the dungeon and the absence of maps. Melina looks ahead, her face full of anxiety. She wonders how much further they have to go. Worried about supplies, Alvin suggests taking a break on the upper floor. Melina insists that she is tired, turns to Kokuru, and asks how she feels. Kokuru gently asks Melina not to overdo it, while blaming herself for her stats dropping. Instead, Elvin feels strong and says that the current number of battles does not bother him at all. Hakaru's mood suddenly brightens, prepares to share extremely joyful news. She exclaims happily, glad that she did not receive all the experience bonuses. Alvin explains that it seems easy to him because he receives excellent support. He feels a pang of guilt in his chest, thinks he is just taking advantage of the situation. His comrades immediately defend him, praising him both as a swordsman and as an unyielding tank. Elvin is a bit embarrassed by their praise, thoughtfully touching his chin. He sighs with relief, satisfied as long as he performs his job well. His eyes slowly lifted upward, and he froze. Something on the cave wall caught his attention. Kokuru asks tensely what happened, and Melina asks the higher Elvin to read the text. Alvin hesitated for a moment before reading the inscription high on the wall. He reads the text about skills and weathering and notices its strange similarity to the previous message. Kokuru reads the text carefully and decides there seems to be no hint of loot from the boss here. Melina looks intently at the boss drop, her face taking on a serious, analytical expression. She understands the dungeons are disappearing, so there will be only one chance for loot. Closing the notebook, she decides to ask a delicate but necessary question. She turns to Elvin, catches his attention, and asks a serious question. Melina asks if he intends to defeat the boss. He confirms this without hesitation. Then she persistently focuses on what really worries her, the items the boss drops. Melina clarifies her thought. Her expression is serious, like Coco Rulisin's with surprise. Kokoro voices that unspoken fear. What if this skill-erasing item can only be used once? Melina ponders, what if several copies drop, or this is not a one-time item? Her logic spirals into despair, and she concludes that the main drop can almost never be consumed. Elvin claps his hands and loudly says, "Don't worry about that after they get it." Melina is completely stunned by his simple and straightforward approach to such a complex problem. She accuses him of deception regarding their sudden perfect synchronization. Elvin calmly asks if she could listen to him for even a second. Melina falls silent for a moment, considering his reasonable request. She yields and allows him to continue, and he thanks her for her patience. He explains that their situation is constantly changing as they move forward. Melina listens intently as he says that someone else might overtake them and reach the boss. He decides that they need to focus on the nearest goal to get a drop from the boss. Melina thinks to herself how Elvin attributes their successes to teamwork. Suddenly she realizes that her new companions are neither selfish nor foolish people. Her gaze softens as she looks at her two teammates with new understanding. She decides that maybe they will find a way out that she could accept as a member of Elvin T's group. Kokuru brightens and agrees that it's better to worry only after they get the item. Melina smiles broadly because she understands this direct approach is the fastest way to their goal. Kokuru bows enthusiastically and says he will give all his strength so that they all start worrying soon. Melina casts a dry glance at Elvin and notices his quiet thought he wants to go on adventures with them. They laughed together, and Melina decided to trust them instead of cold logic. Their resolver was exposed, and Elvin suggested looking for the next safe point. A sudden eerie scream tore through the air and shocked both women. Elvin notices that the echo confuses everything. It is impossible to determine exactly where the scream came from. He notices movement behind them and urgently shouts to everyone, "Run." His comrades, confused, look around while he repeatedly shouts the desperate order, "Flee." Panic-stricken footsteps sound a figure rushes straight towards them. A black-haired young man rushes swiftly through clouds of raised dust. A huge horde of bubbling fish-like monsters chases after him. The team rearranges, and Melina suggests going ahead and leading the attack. Alvin worries whether the long-range spell will hit the fling adventure. Melina quietly calms him and hints, give the man a sign to move to the left. She confidently says she will release an unforgettable, huge spell. Elvin agrees to the plan, ready to send the signal to that man. Kokuru raises Melina's weakening spell, charged with electricity. Alvin returned, ready to dash into the chaos unfolding. He rushed forward, shouting to the man to dodge at his signal. The fleeing traveler looks back, confused by the sudden command. Alvin decisively points to a dark crevice in the cave wall. The man looks into the dark hole and still doubts that strange instruction. Then from afar he notices Melina and Kakuru sparkling with magical energy. His eyes widen in horror as he realizes a huge spell is approaching. Seeing that he understood, Alvin shouted to Melina to release her attack. Melina raises her staff, fierce, magical concentration on her face. Kakoa screams at that moment. The traveler desperately throws himself into cover. A huge wave of crackling electricity surged at the horde of monsters. Electric energy envelops the fish-like creatures with a dazzling flash. The man slipped into the crevice just at the moment when a powerful spell struck. Standing in safety, he looks back and notices that the elder sister Melina was reckless again. The battlefield became a smoking crater, covered with dust and thick smoke. Alvin is captivated by the powerful spell and Melina's watchful eye. Melina admits, from her position she would never have noticed all this. Elvin asked Kakaro about debuffs. She calmly replied that she would remove them. Several surviving monsters gathered, and Elvin suggests finishing them off. His companions nod, ready to engage the remaining threats. The three head to the clearing to deal with the survivors. While they fight, the black-haired adventurer jumped out of his hiding place and joined them. Elvin's gaze was fixed and tense. He was fully focused on how the battle was unfolding. The rescued traveler peeked out of the crevice, looking so bewildered. Oops. His expression changes. He pulls out a dagger and eagerly offers to help his older brother. Worried, Alvin advises the boy not to overexert himself, but rather to rest. The adventure disappeared into a blur, and Alvin stood stunned, not understanding where he had gone. In the whirl of movement, he does a cartwheel through the monsters, shouting that he feels great. He proudly boasts that his health is at maximum, and a defeated monster lies nearby. With an energetic shout, he throws the dagger, continuing the dazzling attack. Melina and Kakoro lowered their staffs, watching the incredibly fast and coordinated skirmish. Alvin can only stand silently and look with disbelief at the stunning speed of the young adventurers. The four stood in the now silent Kaveth fight suddenly ended. On the 32nd floor, at the safety point, the adventurer apologizes for attracting a pack of monsters. He shines with gratitude, praises Alvin's strength, and sincerely thanks him for saving his life. Elvin smiles warmly, reminding him that in adventures you always have to watch each other's backs. A young man called himself Ted a thief, but immediately explained he does not steal. Elvin calms him down. They know that belonging to a class does not define who he really is. Ted laughed happily. It was clear how pleased he was that they accepted him so easily. Alvin introduces his team, explaining that they are only a temporary squad gathered right in the dungeon. Ted's face becomes thoughtful as he repeats the word temporary with interest. Alvin asked if Ted was alone, and Ted confidently boasts about his high level. Melina mockingly recalls his previous scream. He admits that those numbers were too difficult for him. Alvin thinks that a lone thief on these abandoned lower floors is probably looking for treasure. Alvin's expression became serious. He feels that something is wrong here. Melina explains that the thief class is perfect for solo in voting battles. Kokuru agrees that his level should be high, but Alvin still feels that something is wrong. Ted looks away and mumbles that he was sure about something, but his confidence disappeared. Alvin threw it in his face. He was sure that TET also had some negative skill. Tetsmirks asks if you really believe that rumor about the boss drop, supposedly leveling up skills. He dismisses the whole rumor as pure nonsense. Behind them, a gigantic shadowy figure laughs because their mission is funny to it. Melina exclaims in shock and demands an explanation of what he means. Ted explains that skills are what a person is born with and what stays with them for life. He decisively says that in their world, there simply cannot be a convenient thing that breaks the rules. Melina, irritated, asked if they still plan to obtain this thing. Kokuru looks grimly, thoughtfully pondering the same difficult mystery of their mission. The squad stands before Tet, and his cynical words hang over them, pressing like a heavy burden. Tet raises his eyes to them, and a barely noticeable change flashes across his face. He is waiting for their answer. Alvin, face frozen with determination, firmly states that of course they will continue. Melina insists, her voice firm. Her research of ancient texts confirms that such an item exists. Elvin stands aside and listens attentively to the argument of his comrades. Tech retorts with a spark in his voice, explaining that as a thief, he is well versed in all things. He asserts, decisively confident, there is no item that could forever change someone's attributes. Melina passionately denies this, calling her rare skills proof that there is still the unknown. Ted is still unconvinced, silently turning over the thought of the futility of their mission. He frankly tells them that he simply considers their venture pointless. Alvin admits he also had doubts, but they have already gone too far to stop now. Ted asked if they are ready to face inevitable disappointment. Alvin thanks him for the warning, but once again assures that they will not stop and will continue the search. TET shows the bosses on the 40th floor, and Alvin froze in shock seeing how deep these dungeons are. The diagram says their levels are fine, but there are simply too few people for the raid. Tets grinned and remarked that the raid with 3 would be extremely difficult. Melina was suddenly enlightened. She understood what Tets wanted to say. She eagerly asks if he wants to join their company, but he immediately refuses. Alvin apologizes for his persistence, but says that now is not the time to retreat. Ted silently watches, his face unreadable, as they continue to move forward. The group decides to at least scout the dungeon to prepare for the next attempt. Ted sat down, exhausted by their relentless and unwavering determination. Finally, he gives in, muttering that he understands their position. Jumping to his feet, Ted agrees to lead them straight to the boss's room. The team is stunned by his sudden and complete change of heart. Alvin doubts his motives, but Ted says he has simply approached the door before. Ted suggests let his advice serve as an apology for the troubles he caused earlier. The team agreed, eagerly wanting to move forward and act as effectively as possible in their mission. Ted pulled out several vials and sternly ordered them to drink the potion that protects against poison. Elvin raised an eyebrow and asked if they were really necessary, and Ted calmly confirmed why they were. Kokuru suggests casting a magical buff instead of the potion. Ted insists it's better to take a long-lasting potion because the monsters ahead apply poison. Melina agrees he has a good point about Tethans or Veil. Tet swallows the potion in one gulp and urges the others, time to move. Elvin prepares to drink his, grateful for the advice that will save them time. He is tormented by the thought of how deep this dungeon is and whether his squad will be safe. As soon as he swallowed, a strange and powerful sensation suddenly passed through his whole body. The empty bottle slipped from his palm and thudded dully against the stone floor. Elvin slumped forward, his body suddenly weak and unresponsive to his commands. He realizes with growing horror that Tet deceived everyone. The status icon glows without a doubt. He was drugged, and now he is paralyzed. Ted mocks them, calling them fools for believing a gift from a stranger. Alvin said in shock that Tet drank the same as they did. Ted picks up another filled vial and begins to doubt his false assumption. He admits he drank the real potion, and they the paralyzing liquid. Ted explains that when handing them out, he swapped his ampule for the real one. Elvin sees Melina and Kakura. They are also lying nearby, paralyzed. Ted Glue says that Elvin suddenly realized he was too busy to check the item's name. A drop of sweat rolls down Alvin's face as he accepts his complete defeat. Ted mocks them. This is what happens when you don't take adventures seriously. Ted squeezes Alvin's hand, preparing to carry out his sinister plan. He says he will borrow Albina's hand and begins to take off her glove. Empty bottles thudded on the ground, echoing the silent defeat of the team. Ted waved off Elvin, his gaze already sliding to the fallen mage. Suddenly Kokiru stands behind him, her face a storm of righteous anger. She sharply strikes downward with her staff, and Ted yelped in pain. He jumped back and landed in a crouch, completely bewildered by her sudden recovery. Kokiru looks down at her feet and cannot understand how he is still standing. She confirms she just saw him drink the entire bottle of paralyzing liquid. Ted admits he drank it, but Kakaru reveals her skill, a high level of paralysis resistance. Riley enthusiastically praised her for having such a useful and convenient ability. Ted stopped and said that before everything ends, he has one last question for her. He grimaced and sharply demanded to know why his own health is so low. Kokiru shows her trump card. She is level 80, and this astonishes Theta. She menacingly waves a stick and asks if he is sure he wants to continue fighting. The young thief staggered, completely exhausted, and realized there is no other way he must surrender. The knife slipped from his hands, and with a final dull thud struck the ground. He drops to his knees and surrenders, while the woman in robes calls him a fraud. He sharply replied that the one who drugged him has no right to accuse him. Soon a healing spell was cast, while someone bitterly complained about their recent troubles. Kokiru, enraged, loudly announces her intention to bind Tet and asks for a rope. Elvin agrees to help her. In the image lies a rope coiled into a loop. He sincerely thanks Kakaru for taking the lead in this difficult situation. Melina is boiling with rage, complaining about a bump on her head. She proposes a cruel punishment to push Ted right in front of some seaman. Kakaru gently reproaches Melina for her sharpness, believing it was just a joke. Melina suspects that Tet tried to provoke the monsters to attack them. Kakaru agrees that he cannot be trusted, so he decides to hand the matter over to the guild. While they were walking, Elvin pondered whether Tet's actions were intentional and even called them taboo. Melina nodded to Kakaraz. Keeping Tet with us is too dangerous. Kokiru pulls out a memory map that leads back to the entrance and nervously asks Alvin for permission. Alvin paused for a moment and asked if they could wait a little before leaving. The companions turned to him, confused, and asked, "What's wrong?" He begins to explain his reasoning, starting with the first argument. He grimly says that Tet will most likely escape before they reach the guild. Elvin suggests that Ted has an ability that will allow him to slip out of the chains. Ted waved it off, saying it was just overthinking, and Elvin noticed his calm. Boredly looking, Ted confirms Alvin's suspicion that he might run away at any moment. Alvin says that his sword mentor taught him to check when something seems wrong. He begins the interrogation, looking straight at Tet. Why did you steal only the most necessary things for the adventure? Alvin lists the stolen items, potions, food, and spare equipment. Then he says that Tet didn't even touch one particular item, and the girls froze in shock. Alvin recognizes this untouched item as a rare and valuable mermaid's tear. Ted is silent, his face hardening as his plan is exposed. Kokiru realizes that his true motive was to stop them and prevent them from advancing further. Tet sharply and irritably asks, why don't they just go home? Melina correctly guessed, Ted is hiding something from them. Broken, Ted confessed. He felt he had to stop them because they saved him. His expression suddenly changed, and with a joyful smile he said to him, "Die fighting the boss." Elvin is shocked by the sudden manic change in his attitude. Kokiru covers her mouth with her hand, troubled by his words that chill the blood in her veins. Melina squints, trying to comprehend that disturbing surge. Kokiru persistently demands to know if Tet has any information, and he mocks her distrust with a sarcastic smile. Elvin intervenes, acknowledging that Tet tried to protect them from unpreparedness. He proposes a truce. They can return if Ted tells them everything. Ted silently contemplates the offer, carefully weighing his options. The group freezes as Tet begins to explain why the boss is invincible. He asks about the map, and Kakaru sadly confirms that there were no maps in the shop. Ted smiles slyly and asks if it doesn't seem strange to them that there are no maps here. He notes that usually only scraps of maps from previous raids are sold. Melina puts forward theories, but Ted instantly dismisses them as false. He reveals the terrible reason why no group ever returned from the raid. Alvin does not believe and insists experienced adventurers would behave cautiously. Tetskov sneered at the very thought of caution and offered to explain. He warns them the path is teeming with poisonous monsters, but otherwise easy. He enthusiastically tells how a cautious adventurer reached the boss's room and feels no fatigue at all. The team decides to scout the boss's weak spots to prepare for a future attempt. Ted exposes a trap, the doors slam shut, and no one ever comes out again. Melina suddenly realizes, as long as this dungeon exists, no one has ever completed it. Albin traces the logic to its grim end regarding the party's beliefs. The heavy doors slammed shut and Elvin understood. The boss killed them all. Melina understands. There is no retreat, only victory or death. She bitterly says what a cruel demand it is to win on the first try. Kokiru plunges into deep thoughts, pondering the situation. She confessed that she had faced many lower-floor bosses, but this feels completely different. Alvin asks if something is bothering her deeper than her usual abstract worries. Ted says that for rooms with bosses, this is quite normal, there are always some special mechanics. He explains, all this is so that adventurers do not disclose the boss's secrets. Kokiru sharply retorted, dungeons with special conditions always give hints. She finds it strange that in this empty dungeon, there are no hints at all. Kokiru concludes, there should be no retreat option in the boss room. Melina's suspicion grew, is Ted still lying to them? Albin listens silently, pondering her words. Ted insists if everything depended only on levels, the dungeon would have been cleared long ago. Elvin agreed that there must be some secret in this encounter. Tet says there is definitely some mysterious trick hiding here. Melina admits, although some dungeons are exceptions, this simply makes no sense here. Melina's face tightened with determination. She is preparing to meet Tet face to face. The whole company turned their attention to the bound young thief. Melina accuses Ted. He knows too much about the dungeon. She demands to know why he is really here. Her directness in the interrogation so impressed Ted that he noticeably flinched. Elvin and Kirk watched as the confrontation unfolded. Melina says that Tet is clearly not after the treasure chest. She points out a logical error. He shouldn't have known that the lower levels even exist. Melina raises a finger, preparing to deliver her final argument. She guesses that he probably saw many groups enter and never return. Kokiru understands that Tet was only an observer, not a participant. Elvin directs his piercing gaze at Theta and asks why he was just waiting. The cornered techie nervously looks at Elvin, who begins to falter. He changes the subject, telling the company that Elvin already knows the answer. Two women looked at each other, clearly confused by his words. Ted says, ask Big Bro, and they instantly turn back to Elvin. Elvin agrees to share his guess about Tet's motives. He asked Tet to correct him if he was wrong, and Tet silently agreed. The scene shifts to a flashback. It all begins with leaves swirling in the wind. A solitary fruit lies on the ground like a sign of scarcity. Young Alvin fights with other children for food, seeing only rivals in them. During his daily struggle, he recalls a story he once heard in a bar. This was a story about travelers who, instead of rivalry, united and worked side by side. Even before the age of 10, his dream came true. He became an adventurer. He remembers being told that with greedy thinking, he would never find friends. Together with the new company, he went through hard trials, desperately fighting undead monsters. The creatures inspired horror. They were bony skeletons and beings with pumpkin heads. For a certain time, he finally found the friendship he had dreamed of all his life. In the heat of battle, the young adventurer named Elvin was suddenly struck by an exhausting curse. All his stats rapidly plummet. He freezes, unable to move, while his partner calls for cleansing. From the ground, he desperately begged his fleeing comrades to wait and help him. Tears of horror and betrayal flow down his face as he watches them leave. A terrible monster approaches, and his former comrades have completely abandoned him. Miraculously surviving, he crouches alone and vows never to join any team again. He departs from the dungeon a solitary figure, hardened by trauma. Now his cynical thoughts reveal a plan to manage on his own. He decides, let others fight the bosses, and he will just take the reward. He himself admits this was his first ruthless plan for the Sunset Cave. A young woman exclaims with disbelief, asking if he intends to steal those precious drops. She understands that he only escorted them as a show to hide in ambush, wait, and rob them. Her companion in a cloak agreed, saying that this is the only way a lone thief can obtain trophies from bosses. She demands that he confess, so that he is immediately taken to the Adventurers Guild. Alvin defends the thief, and Tet, noticing his unpreparedness, assumes he is a common robber. He believes it was an exceptional case. Tet felt he had no other choice. Finally, the true reason for Tet's actions is revealed. He bears the burden of a negative skill. Ted confirms he never had a chance to steal the drop's retreat was impossible. Elvin presses on, not retreating, inquisitively asking Ted how long he had known about the secrets of the dungeon. He says that the way Tets used so many different techniques in their fight with the merman greatly interested him. Alvin connects this with a common belief. Supposedly people with negative skills hide many other abilities. The woman understands Ted is incapable of giving up, even knowing that the loot will not be his. Ted waved it off, saying he was only interested in the tempting treasure chest of the dungeon. Alvin notes that Ted instead watched how many other adventurers failed the raid. Ted is silent, and his posture reveals the truth of Alvin's accusation. With a self-satisfied smile, Ted admits he warned other adventurers, but no one listened. He bitterly concludes from his experience that adventurers are truly foolish. Alvin understands that Ted joined their young company only to warn them. She gently whispers that having friends is enough, even if it does not take away their skills. Alvin listens to her words, his face thoughtful, quietly reflecting on her feelings. One of the companions sharply turns the conversation to the main mystery and calls out, Albin. She asks about that negative skill of Tet's, and Alvin shrugs and honestly admits he doesn't know the details. Tet announces the mysterious name, the hunter becomes the prey, and his companion remains confused. He repeats the name and grimly says that it is an incredibly troublesome skill. The cleric jumped in shock. She had never heard of such a skill before. The sorceress admits she can't even imagine what this could lead to. Elvin looked intently at Tet and directly asked him what kind of skill it was. Sighing irritably, Tet prepares to explain his curse to the inquisitive company. He unexpectedly says, all debuffs that the party receives instead go to him. Elvin repeated this with disbelief, stunned by the power and unusual abilities of this function. The woman considers the consequences, then dismisses the idea of using it. The mage was stunned. How rare this ability is to be able to distinguish buffs from debuffs. Alvin is puzzled by her focus on technique and admits that he does not understand mages. Two women excitedly explain that buffs both kinds are merely status effects. Tet, somewhat proudly, confirms that his skill is actually super ultra rare. He quickly adds that no matter how rare it is for him, it is just a hassle. The priest disagrees. He is sure that such a unique ability should be an advantage. Ted, with a diagram in hand, emotionally explains how the debuff on the whole team converges only on him. He shows how the debuff on each of the 4 team members is directed straight at him. He then enthusiastically explains that his skill makes the debuff stronger with each stack up to X level. Tet grimly says that getting a bunch of different debuffs at once would be a disaster. His face darkened as a painful memory of exactly that surfaced. In the flashback, it is seen how he begged for help while his team abandoned him. His stats. He grimly realizes that at that dreadful moment, he almost died. Since that terrible incident, he sets out on adventures only alone, and Alvin considers this sad. Maginer rubs himself, wanting to clarify a detail about what Ted just said. She instantly emphasizes the absurdity. All his indicators have dropped by more than half. She explains that she does not doubt him, she just needs to understand how it works. Tets is a little embarrassed, but understands her sincere and analytical curiosity. The mage insists, even with increasing severity, the reduction should not exceed 50. The graph shows a comparison of numbers. His skill reduces by 40, and stacking as much as 59. Tet agrees, but suddenly it turns out that there are debuffs that can combine and double their effects. On the indicator panel, it is visible how 2x debuffs could combine and cut the indicators by 52. The mage reluctantly admits that this is possible, but insists this would be an extreme case. Ted admits this is not the situation in which people usually find themselves. He reveals there is another hidden effect that sometimes triggers this extreme scenario. Ted explains that the effect of his skill sometimes grows and sometimes weakens due to some unknown conditions. The skill description does not hide. Its strength sometimes jumps up and sometimes falls depending on the reward level in the party. The woman asks, is this reward staked the same condition he mentioned earlier? He confirms it is a hidden stat. It can only be checked by trial and error. Hetherizes believes that skills that increase rewards only strengthen the debuffs he receives. Again, a diagram is displayed on the screen. All 4 team members receive debuffs. On the diagram, plus signs appeared at each stage of increasing severity, a sign that everything is intensifying. The complex flowchart clearly shows how a high reward level presses down and makes the upper part of the final y-axis too heavy. He explains that in his previous team, there was a temporary member who could increase rewards. Because of this, the debuff effects suddenly jumped, and he was completely unprepared. Suddenly, Alvin's voice cuts through the silence. He throws a sharp question about how skills work. He asks if there are cases when debuff effects actually weaken. Tet looked back and suddenly began to consider a possibility he had not noticed before. Tet assumes that with skills that give negative rewards, everything will be the opposite. The mage eagerly asks by how much, but Tet sharply cuts off, saying he has no idea. He decisively says that he will never go to a party again, so he doesn't care. His irritation boiled over, and he shouted that he would never join such a pathetic party. Alvina was clearly hurt by this remark, and the cleric tries to comfort him. The mage ignores his outburst and sternly demands that he make a reasoned assumption. Ted assumes that opposite skills most likely completely cancel out weak debuffs. The 3 travelers froze in thoughtful, shared silence, barely breathing to consider this. The sorceress, her face hidden in the shadow of her hat, quietly suggests, "Let's try." She decisively points at Tat, brightly inviting him to join their company. Tat irritably, as if she had listened a little, repeated his oath against parties. She tries to negotiate, assuring that it will be only for a few fights. Every time they assure or refuse, both quietly add an uncertain probably. Alvin bursts in with another, much more attractive offer for Tat, who is still bound. He throws Tat a shiny mermaid tear and says she is his. Ted froze in shock. He recognized an incredibly valuable and rare item. A wave of movement, and the thick ropes suddenly come undone with a dry snap. Ted stands free, stretching out his hands while the ropes lie near the pilot's relaxed feet. One of the group mates dryly remarked that using his escape skill was as easy for him as breathing. Alvin smiled warmly and asked once again if Tet would finally join them. Tet, his previous determination gone, smiles broadly and enthusiastically agrees to join. In the cave at sunset, Kokiru hesitantly apologizes to Tet. She awkwardly apologized for the hit, but he just waved it off saying he started it. Blushing, Kokiru explained that she was not worried about his HP, but was simply trying not to hurt him badly. Ted just says "oh," and a slight smile on his face reveals that he understands her concern. She boasts that she can handle it, jokes that her blows were so strong he even saw stars. Elvin teasingly mocks his sister, noting her unexpected strength and remarking that it's better to stay on her good side. Kokiru, angry and embarrassed, growled in response, "Who are you calling a fool?" While the group walks, Melina asks Albin suspiciously why he so generously gave away the precious tear of a sea creature. She teasingly asks if it's because she called him poor, but Elvin looks away, worried. Then Melina declares that their main goal is, of course, to erase those negative skills. Alvin asked her what she would do when they finally reached the goal of their adventure. With a spark of hope in her eyes, she announced that she wants to officially join the party and soar to new heights. Elvin gently smiles and agrees. Being part of the party is the best. Kokiru reflects, Tet does not hate parties, he truly needs friends who will stay by his side. She is confident their journey can become a real chance for him. Ted impatiently interrupts and asks if they will move further or just stand and talk. Elvin explains that their next goal is to find monsters with buffs to test Tetsu's skills. Ted willingly agrees to go together on this experiment. To thank them for the precious stone, he enthusiastically offers to lead them to the boss room and rushes forward. His foot is about to fall right on a strange, secluded patch of ice. He dramatically slipped on the ice, screamed, and fell loudly on his back. Lying on the ground, he grimaced in pain and does not understand why the ice is exactly at this one spot. The team just watches, while Elvin shouts a warning the ground itself is cracking beneath their feet. Close up, Elvin's eye suddenly opens wide with anxiety before an invisible threat. The terrible clawed paw bursts out from under the ground, fiercely splitting the soil. From the broken earth emerged a huge icy chimera with a deafening roar. Alvin could not believe his eyes, such a mighty monster was hiding on this floor. Kokiru asks what to do, suggesting to retreat. Tet is still lying on the ground. The word retreat echoes in Tetsu's thoughts and causes a strong negative reaction in him. Lying on the ground, Tetsu's eyes widen in horror as he looks at his new team. He panics, overwhelmed by the fear that he will be abandoned again. In a flashback, it is seen how he was made bait. His former party abandoned him, and he ended up surrounded by monsters. He screams in despair. He does not want to be left here to die. His memory is a chaotic whirlpool of sadness and pain from betrayal. He recalls how naively he believed that his former party comrades were true friends. Tears rolled down his face as he realized all he ever wanted was friends. A scream bursts out in his head. He is convinced he will die as his new team calls him by name. Melina's voice sharply pulled him out of reality. She urgently asked if he could hear her. Tet sharply inhaled, turning back to reality, eyes wide open in confusion. Kakaru sighed with relief. When he didn't get up, she feared he was wounded. Ted raised his eyes to her. His face showed pure, complete surprise. Kakaru strikes the chimera with her staff with a swing, protecting him from the attack. She desperately urges Ted to get up, all her attention focused on protecting him from the beast. Ted, disbelieving, asks, did they really not flee from the battle? Alvin pushes the chimera back and admits he would have retreated if he were fighting alone. With a smile full of confidence, he declared that with their current strength they could handle this. Ted just stares, muttering the word continue, as if it were something foreign. He notices that no one in the back row stops casting spells. He sees that no one is fleeing from this merciless fight. Tet, filled with new determination, firmly stated that this time no one would leave him behind. Determination flared in his eyes. He shouted that he could still fight. Alvin accepts his statement with a broad, admiring smile ready for battle. The monstrous chimera roars and rushes downward, preparing a powerful attack. The lion's head roars, signaling the start of a devastating attack. Alvin shouts loudly, warning of the approaching icy breath that will cover the entire group. He anxiously asks if this is the monster's most powerful attack and pushes his comrades back. Tet suddenly rushes forward, leaving Alvin shouting and amazed at his reckless act. Ted stands defiantly before the huge growling beast, ready to fight it one-on-one. Alvin realizes that Tet has a plan, and he asks for protection in case something goes wrong. From behind, Melina cast a weak spell that grants resistance to ice and warned him, be careful. Ted, thank you for the support. He closes his eyes as the magic envelops him. His eyes suddenly opened wide, with a sharp, focused gaze ready to execute his plan. The heads of the lion and goat of the chimera begin to charge energy for the attack. The two heads glow with power, preparing to release a powerful destructive breath. The snake's tail raised back, and its head glowed ominously, intensifying the tension. Tets noticed his chance and shouted, right now. He throws the knife through the air with incredible speed and flawless accuracy. The chimera was completely caught off guard. It was still charging its attack in the last moments. The thrown knife hits the snake's head with a loud clang, and it sharply recoils. The sharp jolt interrupts the breath attack, and the whole creature loses balance. Alvin stares in shock, realized that it was a perfectly timed counterstrike. Tet instantly calls Melina, signaling attack with lightning. Melina is already ready. Her staff crackles with powerful electric energy. She raises the staff high and summons a powerful destructive spell. A colossal explosion of lightning engulfed the battlefield with a blinding flash. Ted shouts, stunned by the incredible power of her destructive magic. From the smoke emerges the winged figure of the chimera. She tries to escape the explosion. The wounded beast breaks free from the chaos, still alive, and begins to take flight. Alvin, knowing that killing in the air will be harder, prepares to act decisively. He rushes forward with incredible speed, shouting the name of the skill. Comrades watch, frozen with admiration, and Kokiru cannot hold back the words. What insane agility he has. Close up, Kakaro's tense gaze, watching his blurred movement. Ted covers from the ground, throws a glowing knife, and encourages the strategy. Alvin jumps onto the back of the rising chimera and mercilessly slashes it with his sword. Their combined strike was too strong. The monster crashed back to the ground with a roar. The rest of the team stood nearby, silently watching the aftermath of the battle. They enthusiastically praised the head skill, and Alvin praised his cool glowing knife. The battlefield is now immersed in a thick cloud of dust from the impact. Tet stands alone, gasping heavily after a fierce, exhausting fight. He raises his reddened and exhausted gaze as Alvin approaches him through the dust. Alvin simply and sincerely said to him, "Great job." These words troubled Tet and triggered a deep, very personal inner monologue in him. He recalled with a bitter smile that he had always considered all adventures nonsense. He wonders why risk lives for unreliable information when friends are nearby. Suddenly everything becomes clear to him, and he rejects his previous cynical thought as mistaken. He believes that others have probably already come to terms with their friends' weaknesses in negative skills. Apparently they shared all troubles and joys together, like in those stories. He finally admits what lies behind his cynicism. He deeply envied them. Alvin stands before Tet, hand extended a gesture of greeting and friendship. Ted hesitates whether he should join, but finally tells himself, "All right, I will join, at least for now." Alvin jokingly slapped Tet, casually apologizing for stealing the last hit. Hunched over in irritation, Tet releases a puff of steam. The travelers continue through a barren, cracked, and abandoned landscape. Their journey continues through rough, uneven rocky terrain. Standing in a huge, empty cave, the travelers pause their journey. Alvin replays the fight in his head and suddenly notices the chimera's weak spot is its snake tail. Ted confirms with a cheerful snort that this is indeed so. Tethin impressed Alvin by confessing that it was his first chimera fight. Alvin asks if Ted has any special gift for finding weak spots. Nearby, the witch Melina expresses her own interest. She is curious how verifiable this is. Melina asked for an explanation, but Tet is struggling and cannot clearly explain his method. Ted stops, thoughtfully choosing words on how to explain his special gift. He admits his secret is in the ability to enter the mind of the monster creator. Alvin listens with a blank expression on his face, clearly confused by this strange idea. Melina is equally confused and asks herself who this creator is. Ted enthusiastically presents his grand theory: their entire world is a simulation. He points to the predictable, balanced rules of the world and calls them proof of the creator's existence. Alvin waved it off, saying it's natural, but Ted insists this is undeniable proof. With open arms, Ted declares that their world is perfectly balanced. He explains vulnerable spots are placed where it is logical and predictable. Melina considers his arguments and involuntarily agrees. The idea of intelligent placement makes sense. Tet proudly boasts that his special technique almost never fails. Alvin laughingly waved off his well-thought-out theory, calling it merely a savage intuition. Melina sadly understands that, unfortunately, she will never be able to use such a method. Healer Kakaru doubted whether she would manage to get along with such a logical creator. Ted closes his eyes, repeating why his idea is so hard to convey. As soon as Alvin asked Coco for her opinion, she suddenly gasped in horror. She is completely immersed in the screen of her status. Suddenly, a dark aura appears around her. She exclaims that the curse of her jealous god has just taken effect. Her face froze in pure shock from what she saw. Looking at the statistics, she bitterly confirmed the rare drop did not fall for her. Alvin realized with surprise that their predictions had come true. The party strangely celebrates this result, calling it a miracle. They whisper, plotting a conspiracy. They want to test the skill of Tets. Hunter the hunter becomes the prey. Their threatening silhouettes loom over the unsuspecting Tet. With sly smiles, they can't wait to test his skills. Tet, realizing that he is their experiment, lets out a squeak of horror. While the others cheerfully walk away, he worries whether he will be okay. The team searches the Iraqi canyon, but the debuff monster is nowhere to be found. Ted suddenly interrupts their search, jumps down, and shows them something new. He proudly pulls out a new knife and challengingly asks, "So how is it cool?" He explains how it leaves a cool light trail, and Alvin is simply amazed by it. Melina asks what it's for, and Ted honestly admits, it just looks cool. Melina is not impressed at all. She bluntly says she doesn't understand the appeal. Alvin and Tetbond agree that only the two of them will understand it. Ted boasts although he has little strength, his firepower is incredible. Melina suspiciously asks if he stole the rare weapon from the boss. Ted indignantly blurts out that he found everything himself on the 50th floor. Melina, stunned by this, sharply turns and directly asks Ted about his level. With a smug smile, Ted announces that he is an impressive level 55. Melina simply froze in shock. His level turned out to be unexpectedly high. She finally realizes that he had been stronger all along and sincerely apologizes for doubting him. Ted explains that he accidentally leveled up because he was completely focused on treasure hunting. Suddenly, a strange bubbling instantly draws Alvin's keen attention. Finally, they find their target, a water salamander that casts a debuff. Alvin worries that he won't be able to hold back and asks someone else to handle it. Tet volunteers were preparing to throw throwing knives to provoke the creature. The salamander's mouth opens wide and a bubble of weakness bursts out of it. Alvin stands ready and announces that he will allow the debuff to hit him. A moment before the strike, Tetro's knife suddenly pops a bubble. Tet rushed forward, striking the salamander with his blade. A small pile of shiny coins appeared on the ground. Ted excitedly says to Alvin, "Check your status immediately." Ted begins to explain that Alvin should not have a debuff icon. He froze in shock, and he doesn't have a debuff either. Alvin is also confused and wonders, did Tet somehow dodge this? Ted confirmed he did not feel any of the expected debuff effects. He is bewildered by his high stats and unexpected experience points. Melina confirms that Kokuru also does not have the curse of the jealous god. Ted was confused when Melina invited him to a party again. He, smiling, cheerfully asks his older sister, "Is your memory failing you?" Melina exclaims in response, firmly denying any such problem. Irritated, she shouts that he completely misunderstood her. Tet passionately exclaimed that he meant for her to stay forever. He was confused and said that she can't just slip that to him like that. Kokuru notices that Melina made the same mistake, and she bursts out swearing. Melina, embarrassed, tries to completely silence this awkward topic. She clarifies she meant that he should stay on the team forever. Ted loudly demands that all his characteristics and experience points be explained to him in detail. Melina agrees and prepares to tell everything from the very beginning. She reveals the core of the truth: they all possess negative skills. Ted was stunned when he found out that everyone does that. He admits that at first he thought only Melina was cursed. Everyone came to this dungeon alone to grab the boss's drop. Ted recalls how Elvin said that they were just a temporary group. He barely restrains his anxiety, so many negative skills together dangerous. Melina looks thoughtfully, his sound opinion makes her ponder. Melina decides it's time for Kokuru to talk about her skill. Kokuru calmly voices her negative skill, the usurper's severed head. She begins to enthusiastically explain to Tet the complex consequences of this. Tet listens attentively. Ted sees her mastery and lets her grab all the bonuses for kills. He thinks that because of this people hate her, and she confirms it. Ted asks why others would go celebrate with her knowing this. Melina begins to explain her own negative skill and reaction. Her skill strengthens the team, but at the same time weakens the killers and redistributes their experience. The whole team stands united while she explains the complex mechanics. Ted finds it difficult, but now understands where the increase in his stats came from. Kokuru joyfully celebrates that she no longer grabs all the kill bonuses. Ted inquired about the debuffs, asking in surprise where they came from. This debuff is the cumulative curse of the jealous god, which gradually lowers your stats. Ted groans from the terrible feeling the curse constantly reduces his indicators. Kokuru, with a joyful smile, explains that her high level makes the debuff almost unnoticeable. Elvin notices with surprise that Tet is adapting rapidly, although it needs detailed explanation. Tet raises a new question: why Cook, and who is currently without debuffs? Puzzled, Ted thinks that this debuff should not have ended up on Kokuru at all. Like a blow, he is pierced by the realization his own skills were supposed to attract the curse to himself. Ted is in panic. Did the debuffs that were supposed to be on him somehow disappear? Alvin calmly said that Ted's skill actually did not disappear from him. Melina decisively says that it is his skill, the very reason why the debuffs disappeared. With a sly smile, she reminds him of the additional hidden effect of his ability. Suddenly, a memory about the reward frequency mechanic surfaced in shock Tet. Melina changes the subject and asks Alvin to talk about his negative skill. With a serious expression, Alvin begins to reveal his personal curse to the group. Tet nervously swallowed, expecting another complex and powerful negative skill from Alvin. Alvin shows his skill with a gentle smile, only the chance of occurrence X. Stunned Tet considers the skill's name incredibly pathetic and not impressive at all. Tet immediately apologizes for his sharp reaction, and Alvin notes this is already the second time. Alvin explained that his skill so greatly reduced the chance of receiving a reward that Tet's debuffs simply disappeared. He confidently confirms that this was enough to completely cover both the 5 and the 3 reductions. But Ted feels that something in this situation still doesn't add up. He notices Alvin's skills should reduce drops, but instead they fall as usual. Kokuru, with a smile, reminds Teta of her own skills in Dendum regarding kill trigger defects. Teta finally clicks the last detail falls into place. Her skill makes all other kill-activated skills useless. He nodded and said he understood Kuker's skill completely cancels the drop chance penalty on Alvin. Alvin finally recalls the meeting with Kokuru and how he sincerely asked her to join him. The memory makes Ryu blush, and Melina teases her for turning as red as a beet. The diagram shows their perfect synergy, a closed loop where negative skills cancel each other out. Melina notes that in fact they benefit from this. Their ability to neutralize debuffs increases. Alvin, however, is stuck in deep thought. He feels some details still don't make sense. The detailed scheme breaks down the complex interweaving of techniques from their past clash. Four adventurers stand together, and Kokuru vividly explains what skill synergy is. The rough, crackling texture seems to signal the scene is changing, and so is the tone of the conversation. Kokuru asked Tet if the explanation of their team's strengths was clear enough. Melina lists her advantages: high level, good composition, and mastery of many skills. Kokuru adds that thanks to her ability to cleanse, they don't even need to worry. Ted, crossing his arms, sternly warns, joining them means facing dangerous bosses. After the serious statement, a moment of silence hung between Melina and Coco. Elvin decisively steps forward and firmly confirms that Tet's assessment is absolutely correct. He admits that the choice is difficult, confessing that success is not guaranteed. Tet lowers her gaze, her shoulder drooped as she contemplates the huge risk. Alvin's face lit up, and he exclaimed that this team is their best chance to win. Burning with determination, Albin persistently asks Tet to join them to challenge together. The sound of his powerful call for teamwork echoes in the womb. Four adventurers stand shoulder to shoulder, a united front, for Tet is now among them. Finally, Tet yields. She says she understands and agrees to join the team. Elvin smiles, pleased, but Ted interrupts and puts forward one important condition for her consent. Tet, casting a sharp, piercing glance, begins to warn them not to abandon her. She barked that if she is abandoned, she will turn into a lifeless monster and curse them. Elvin simply laughs and explains that it would be bad. He needs Ted's skills. Chibitet mercilessly gave Elvin's performance of shoddy pep a miserable 3 out of 10. Alvin promised that in any retreat, he would personally carry Tet so she would not be left behind. The crackle of energy emphasizes his enthusiastic, though strange, promise of support. Elvin jokingly threw the protesting Ted over his shoulder while he grumbled, and he boasted how much he could carry. He brushed off the thought that he had overdone it and stubbornly said it was simply his sincerity. Tet, swinging, accidentally hits Melina. She grimaces in pain. Alvin says, "Enough mischief, stop," and quickly gather the fallen items before they disappear. The group scatters across the barren terrain, collecting scattered loot. Ted comes across a scroll and wonders, is this a drop, while Kokuru assumes it's just flavor text. Melina thoughtfully imagines an illiterate monster holding the scroll tightly. Elvin wonders if the creature was programmed to swallow it, and this confuses Melina. With the rustle of parchment, Ted decides to unroll the scroll and read it. She reads aloud the mysterious message, pronouncing colors one by one, and at the end a sunset appears. Kokoro proposes a theory that it's a hint about monster types, but Melina points out inconsistencies. Ted suddenly realizes this sequence of colors is a rainbow. She explains that the monster appeared in the order of the rainbow colors, and this shocks Melina. Melina sincerely admits she had never noticed this pattern before, but still doubts if it is really necessary. She rejects the hint too late, only purple and black remain. Albin thoughtfully says that the color itself could be the main theme of this dungeon. Ted sighed bitterly. The scroll gave no hint about the boss. She anxiously thinks, could there be texts hidden in the dungeon that they have not yet found? Close-up of Coco, she wonders if the hints were already here and they missed them. Alvin decides that you can't force a decision, you have to wait until inspiration comes. He suggests not stopping and moving forward, a sudden acceleration that impresses Tet, who is watching. The team approaches long stairs leading down to the poisonous floor. Elvin warns tensely, be careful, and Ted boldly boasts that their potions are the best. Four adventurers descend the stairs, their silhouettes visible from above. Walking, Elvin calls Tet. His tone becomes more serious. He says directly, the chance for a drop Halishek's skill turned out to be a complete burden. Tetsmerks completely agrees and sincerely admits that she is impressed. She cannot believe that Elvin survived as an adventurer. Her expression softened when she admitted that she never thought her skills would be useful to anyone. Elvin, smiling warmly and sincerely, tells Tets that he is truly glad she is their friend. Tets is visibly moved by his words. She turned her back to contemplate her feelings. She turns back, smiling from ear to ear, and boasts that she is useful even without her skills. At the entrance to the 33rd floor, Tets thanks him and offers her firepower for the boss. Elvin quickly glanced at Melina and Kokurao, then leaned down to talk to Tets. He quietly leans in and begins to whisper a conspiratorial secret just for the two of them. He admits with relief, finally, another guy has appeared in our company. An awkward silence hung over the group as Tets lowered her gaze, and her facial expression changed. A shadow fell over her face. She hesitates, trying to find the words. Melina and Kokuru shout in unison from behind her back that Tets is a girl. Tetsu's face became a mask of deep redness and shame from the sudden revelation. Elvin is completely stunned, his face twisted from pure, genuine shock. Gripped by panic, he desperately tries to justify his mistake, referring to Tetsu's male name and his manners. Feeling burning shame, Ted called him an idiot and quickly ran away, overwhelmed by embarrassment. She shouted in response, "Let him be Vanguard himself, and she will just throw knives." Kokuru and Melina harshly scolded Elvin for his fatal error in judgment and incredible ruthlessness. Overwhelmed with emotions, Elvin falls face down to the ground in a theatrical, sweeping apology. The group tries to settle everything, and Melina suggests that Ted join her. Tetsu, snorting, remarked that Alvin is completely clueless about such matters. Their quarrel is instantly overshadowed by the appearance of a monstrous colossal rooster. The giant rooster menacingly loomed over Alvin, and he quietly made a sound of surprise. Suddenly, the giant monster dissolves into a puddle of black sticky liquid with a wet splash. Alvin slyly smiles, commenting on the last-minute addition of Gaudi, and wonders what to do next. Tet energetically demands a reward for his hard work. Kakaru readily picks up this idea. With a decisive shout, Alvin encourages Ford's squad to move forward. They find themselves at the lowest level of the dungeon, and there a skeleton monster lets out a terrifying scream. The exhausted creature instantly lunged forward, releasing a hail of dark spheres toward the group. Alvin notices that an elemental buff has worked on Kakaru. Now he can fully focus on precise attacks. His shining blade collided with the monster's hand, and a shower of bright metallic sparks fell around. The monster emitted a piercing, high-pitched squeal as Alvin's sword struck it firmly. A close-up shows how the monster's form slightly distorts and flickers from the force of the blow. Melina watches the first exchange of words, with a slight surprise on her face. Alvin quickly analyzes the fight, notices how the monster is visibly losing life, and already anticipates its next attack. Jumping back instinctively, he immediately moved to cover the team's rear. He is momentarily confused when Melina and another companion suddenly step forward. It seems the two adventurers have their own plan. They walk confidently, each step full of purpose. On the opposite side of the cave, monsters like distorted shapes and drops prepare to launch their next attack. Ted suddenly realizes Melina is going to finish off the monster. This requires colossal firepower. Alvin openly admits his uncertainty. They cannot confirm the attack pattern until it works. He instantly devises a plan, orders Ted to watch Melina, and rushes to intercept the attack himself. Their tactic is visible on a simple diagram. The vanguard lures aggression onto itself, while the rear remains safe. Alvin thoughtfully watched how easily their team fought in unison, barely needing words to coordinate movements. Kokuru cast a spell of resistance to darkness at the last moment, just as the monster released its first blast. "Perfect moment, Kakaru," Alvin exclaimed and tensed, preparing to repel the incoming attack. A glowing rune flared on his shield as he successfully parried the first dark projectile. The monster screeched piercingly, as if confirming their guess, and launched a second projectile. Alvin Perry experiences the second and third explosion. A wave of force pushes him back. Clenching his teeth, he admits that fully combining the monster at this level is not easy. Forced to drop to one knee, he raises his eyes. The shadowy leg of the monster is already descending to crush him. A healing spell envelops him, and he gratefully thanks Kalkar for her timely support. He hastily jumps aside, amusingly apologizing as he passes by his comrades. Tet seizes the chance and shouts that the monster is frozen and vulnerable after its powerful move. His dagger deeply pierces the side of the monster, splitting part of its hardened body. Elvin instantly recognized Tet's attack. It was a dagger technique that grew stronger with each strike. The wounded monster screams piercingly as the team regroups, and their mages are already ready to act. A majestic, shining battle axe of pure energy materializes, hovering and ready to strike. Melina gave a thumbs up, smiled, and thanked the team for their patience during her long spell. An apocalyptic wave of white destructive energy burst from her, breaking through the cave. Alvin only whispers in awe before the stunning demonstration of magical power. An anxious memory emerges the past party in chaos, and the mage shouts a warning in panic. Alvin realizes with horror that the major is about to cast his spell despite the risk. The bat-like monster hit a comrade, and the enraged mage shouted in response, "Die." Alvin's face turned to stone with horror. An invisible figure laughs maniacally, enjoying this rare spectacle. The memory continues. Mage Karen angrily scolds Alvin for standing too close. Alvin sharply replied, angry and confused. He does not understand this unfair accusation. He insists that standing still is a necessary risk during spellcasting. Karen does not understand why Alvin risks getting hit just to take the last finishing blow. Alvin insists the situation was very dangerous, especially for the mage. He shoved a rare item under Karen's nose and explained that the reward was worth the risk. On Alvin's face pure, genuine irritation and rage. His anger quickly fades, leaving a quiet, somber expression of humble acceptance on his face. Turning away from the group, he admits to himself that Karen was right, the danger is real. He retreats into solitude, closing himself off, and turns over compromises in his mind, for example, suggesting a shallower, safer floor. He sighs bitterly. Instead of thinking about his own level, he has to worry about the team's money. The thought of finally leaving that oppressive and exhausting party firmly settles in his mind. He stubbornly convinces himself that this difficult experience has, in its own way, brought a reward. Now he feels free and can swing the sword without hesitation. He gladly gives Melina a high five, enthusiastically praising her powerful and impressive burst of light magic. Melina smiles and quietly thanks him. He bought her the necessary time to complete the spell. Alvin gave a high five to Tet, enthusiastically praising his impressive dagger work and sharing the excitement. He turns to Kokuru. She nervously fusses even before he manages to extend his hand for a high five. He sincerely tells Kakar that her heels and accessories are perfection itself. She shyly giggles and meets his palm with a gentle, grateful high five. She blushes and asks if he really thinks so, confused by his specific and sincere praise. He can bury her intricate support role with his simpler, direct combat actions. He loudly and sincerely declares that healers like her are the most important part of any team. Kokuru is quite touched by the compliment, while Melina dryly notes that they clearly overdid the praise. Embarrassed, Kokuru blushes and tries to divert attention, insisting that Melina is much cooler than her. She enthusiastically praises Melina for flawless spells, and Melina gently waves it off. It's my duty. Kokuru adds that Melina even noticed a barely perceptible change in the monster's ranged attacks. Melina shyly explains that she is simply observant and noticed that the monster's magic circle changed. She then gives all the praise to Tet, admitting that in this fight he was better than her. Melina reproachfully noted that Tet caused the most disruptions of feat she should have accomplished herself. Kokuru cannot get rid of the thought, is Tet's success connected to her theory about the creator's feelings? Tetwings admits that he used to fight with the demons of the abyss and offers a special lesson. Alvin playfully tousled Tet's hair and remarked that it is strange how consciously he can counterattack. Tet was confused and embarrassed, said that Alvin is actually much more capable than him. He awkwardly tries to express praise, points to Alvin, stammers, and searches for the right words. Alvin looks a bit irritated by Tet's clumsy attempts to praise him. He smiles reassuringly and tells Ted that he doesn't need to force himself to speak. Finally, Tet finds the words he was looking for and, wagging his finger, emphasizes his point. He explains Alvin handles everything excellently, so it is impossible to choose just one thing. Tetless grants many skills from combat mastery and the ability to take advantageous positions to skillful logistics planning. Melina aptly summarized, she knows that Alvin handles adventures excellently. The words hit Alvin like a blow. He admitted that he is hearing this for the first time. Ted encourages him to believe in himself, joking that his negative skill just stands out. Alvin plunged into memories and realized that all his past hardships forged the skills that everyone now admires. He looks with a confident smile, knowing that his difficult past was not in vain. The squad approaches a dark crevice surrounded by huge pale tree roots. They marked it as the last safe point before the boss room and grimly noted that there were no more clues. Alvin glanced at his screen for a moment. A timer and a map were flashing on it. He decides that everyone should take a longer break and eat before moving on. The team of 4 settles at the designated safety point on the lowest floor of the dungeon. Ted loudly complains about the boring field rations and dreams of a hearty meal of roasted meat. Melina says she likes the rations, but Ted instantly spoiled her appetite by calling them squirrel food. Melina was completely shocked and horrified by such a comparison. Alvin chewed his ration bar, dreaming of fresh vegetables from his hometown. Talks about tasty food, upset one of the comrades. He can no longer stand it. Kakaro's stomach rumbles loudly, and she admits that she is getting even hungrier. Ted notes that Kakaru does not fit at all into his idea of a modest, devout priest. Kakaru blushes and shyly admits that even at school she was often scolded for secretly eating candies. Her companion, Tet, looked up in surprise and asked about her school years. She smiles and explains that she studied at a seminary in the East, but eventually left. Tet jokingly teased her, wasn't she expelled for gluttony, to which she loudly objected. While the team rested, Kakaru sadly told that the family business declined and she could no longer pay for education. Against the background of cheerful bird chirping, she happily adds that the family business has recovered and now she sends them money. Their other companion, Melina, chimes in, admitted that she also dropped out of school but not an ordinary one, a magical academy. Kokiru glows with admiration for the prestigious institution, but Melina explains she refused because it was too expensive. With a tired expression, Melina says that her family is minor nobility, which surprises the swordsman Alvin. She says that being the fourth daughter, her parents sent her to the academy to find a husband and Ted just burst out laughing. Melina sternly reproaches Tet for rudeness, and Kokiru gets flustered and blushes at the very thought of marriage proposals. Melina concluded, with her skills she became an adventurer simply to escape from home. Tet vividly tells about his humble origins. He left the orphanage and became an adventurer only for money. In the memory, he brings food to other orphans and sincerely admits that he is grateful to them and still sends help. Alvin looked at Tet with a knowing smile, and Tet suddenly became embarrassed. With a friendly look, Alvin asks Ted to say if he has other reasons besides money. Ted is completely thrown off track because of general prodding, shame raging in his head. To divert attention, he quickly shifts the question to Alvin and asks him to tell where he is from. Alvin thoughtfully admitted, although his story is a secret, he had never truly felt disgust before. Four travelers rest together on a rocky clearing, ready to listen. He begins, his family are simple, unremarkable farmers, but he was always passionately interested in adventurers. In the memory appears young Alvin with eyes full of stories, inspired by a former swordsman adventurer who lived nearby. He remembers how he was always the strongest among his peers and had a bunch of skills. Being the second son, he was not destined to inherit the family fields, so becoming a swordsman became a natural choice. Now Alvin sits calmly, he has just finished his seemingly simple story. Ted admitted disappointedly, he was hoping for a more dramatic backstory. Melina slightly smiles and agrees, his story is so simple that there is nothing to analyze here. Kokiru just smiles and jokingly says that this makes him the younger brother. Alvin scratched the back of his head, smiled shyly, and agreed that his story is quite ordinary. To change the subject, he suggests they take a short break from the conversation. The tired group leaned against the stone wall to rest. Ted immediately began taking off his boots. While the comrades relax, someone even dozes off, Alvin immerses himself in a quiet conversation with himself. He looked at his squad and thoughtfully thought that if they had stayed together, they wouldn't even have to erase their skills. This thought makes him wonder what his friends would do if they could erase their abilities. He imagines Kokiru joining the great team, taking on the hardest quests and leading the assault with his staff. Then he imagines Ted forming a squad whose goal is to quickly and efficiently gather mountains of treasures. He immediately thinks of Melina, imagines her joining the smart group, striving for magical knowledge and the library. Alvin raises his eyes. Seriousness is on his face. He is pondering whether to go further without this particular group. And in another, opposite thought, Kokiru quietly wonders if he will ever find a better company than this one. She glances at her resting comrades, and her eyes are soft, full of tenderness. A close-up of her face reveals calm satisfaction and deep gratitude to the friends who are now nearby. The memory begins with the groan of the well pulley as a heavy bucket is lifted. Very young Alvin struggles to carry a full wooden bucket of water. He climbs a small ladder to pour the water into a larger barrel near an old rural building. The boy approached the old man and said with a smile that he had finished his work for today. The gray-haired old man praised him for the work, then said that the next task was to mow the grass. Young Alvin pouted, clearly disappointed by the boring chore. He protests and demands a sword, but the old man struck him with a broom for his impudence. The old man lectures him, explaining that working on the ground hardens the whole body. Without this, one cannot handle a sword. Alvin retorted, accusing the old man of just wanting to lie down because his back hurts. He boldly calls the old man a liar, his face showing stubbornness he does not believe. The old man's expression changes when he says he knows Alvin secretly practices sword swings every morning. The revelation hits Alvin like a physical blow and stuns him into silence. An impressive image, the old man with a muscular, scarred body skillfully holds a large, broad sword. The memory ends with the sincere dream of young Alvin to hold a shining sword and set off on adventures with friends. Returning to the present, Alvin notices Kokiru quietly humming to herself in the darkness. He watches her from behind, enchanted by her quiet, personal moment of rest. Kokiru is lost in her own world, quietly humming. Nearby is an open screen of her stats, but she doesn't even look at it. Her eyes suddenly snap open. She catches Alvin's gaze on her. She turns to him, and in her eyes there is no simple surprise or embarrassment at being caught. Kokiru pressed her hands to her mouth, completely embarrassed by the situation. Elvin apologizes for interrupting, but she pleadingly asks him to pretend he heard nothing. She shyly bows her head and insists that her humming is not for strangers' ears. Excitedly, she asked if her tone was off, and Elvin's awkward reassurance only made her feel worse. Alvin panics inside. He realizes he messed up and must figure out how to cheer her up. He nervously reached into the pouch on his chest, looking for a way out of the awkward moment. In his gaze determination, he finds in the pouch what he was looking for. He extends his gloved hand, holding a small wrapped candy. With a gentle smile, he offers her the candy and tells her not to worry about her singing. He explains that it's a mint treat from the cafeteria, and she exclaims with joy. Her eyes sparkle with happiness, and she eagerly begins to unwrap the little treat. She announces that she will eat it now, and Elvin watches, relieved it seems she is feeling better. Alvin did not take his eyes off her. There was an elusive and piercing expression on his face. A close-up catches her lips. She gently touches them with the tip of her finger. Her eyes are closed in calm satisfaction. A small, contented smile on her lips. She is savoring the candy. Surrounded by an aura of mint leaves, she smiles and says that sucking on it really soothes her throat. Elvin's eyes opened wide, and his face flushed bright red from her innocent remark. He stammers and barely utters an agreeing yes, completely flustered, while other members of his team sit nearby. Melina chimed in from the side, saying that Kakaru's song stirred nostalgia in her. Kokiru gazes into the distance and explains that it is a song from her native land. She adds that this thought came to her because they had just recently talked about their hometones. Elvin suddenly realized why she opened the character screen and asked if she was looking at the clock. She says that she counted time by the rhythm of the song as if it were her own internal stopwatch. She explains the song as 1 beat per second and can keep this count for about 5 minutes. Elvin, impressed, laughs and admits that he probably wouldn't last even 10 seconds. Kakaru, with a quiet smile, explains how this skill will be useful to a mage to catch a moment of luck and accurately measure the duration of spells. When she adjusts the rhythm to the song, it is much easier and more fun for her to keep the beat. She modestly brushes it off, saying it's a simple, boring topic, but Elvin is already starting to disagree. Melina jokingly said to Kakaru, SHH, interrupting Elvin's attempt to praise her skill even more. Elvin sincerely admits that, not having magic, he does not fully understand everything she does for him. With a warm smile, she tells him that it's okay if he doesn't understand, she still has a long way ahead. She encourages him, just keep going forward and don't worry, but he admits to himself he doesn't understand it. Leaning in, she whispered a promise to always support his HP, radiating complete reliability. Melina smiled slyly, overhearing their quiet conversation. She praises Coco Ru's melodious singing so enthusiastically that Coco Ru herself blushes with embarrassment. Melina adds that as a healer she never needed such precise timing, and Tet notes that someone overheard them. Alvin directs praise to Melina, saying that she is also wonderful and reliable. He admits maintaining several buffs on the team so that they do not fade is incredibly difficult. He thought aloud, do Coco Ru's buffs last unusually long? Melina looks at Coco Ru with a questioning gaze, as if asking whether her buffs really last that long on average. When Alvin asked how long her buffs would last, Coco Ru instantly flinched. Embarrassed, she insists that her buffs last quite normally in average, as long as they should. Melina, observing that conversation, thinks that Coco Ru's secrecy is strange and completely unnecessary. She counters that Coco Ru seems to handle everything in battles extraordinarily easily. With a sly smile, Alvin recalls how her level 80 strength allowed her to take down a goblin with 1 strike. Coco Ru's expression becomes serious as she remembers her helplessness before the huge goblin horn. Elvin watches her with anxiety, quietly whispering her name as she relives that painful memory again. With a gentle smile, she thanks her friends, saying that she is still here thanks to them. Tet jokingly asks if they seriously intend to put a mighty cleric in the vanguard. Alvin smiles, brushing off the idea and explaining that it's simply time to move out. Getting ready to leave, he casually reminds Ted, make sure your shoelaces are tied. The 4 walk through the narrow canyon gorge with renewed determination. Their determined group ventures deeper into the winding rocky dungeon landscape. In Albin's profile, their keen, focused gaze is visible, and they move forward together. Finally, they found themselves before massive double doors, covered in ivy, the entrance to the boss's room. Melina notices with relief that they have finally arrived, while Tets intently studies the pattern on the doors for clues. Alvin stopped, his boots touched the dusty ground, and he asked to speak with his companions for a moment. The four travelers stood shoulder to shoulder before the monumental sealed entrance leading to the final trial. He begins by stating that they have already gathered enough items for a solid payout. Alvin says that essentially their goals in this adventure have already been achieved. Melina understood mentally. In fact, she came to find a way to erase her negative skills. She looks down, her face gloomy, and thinks to herself that it is not true. In the memory, Melina is seen carefully studying the squad's rating report, traveling through the dungeon. Another memory shows Tet. She is sitting relaxed in the city square and listening intently to the barge's song. A frame emerges in the memory. A former squad member stands with Kakru in front of the dungeon. In the memory, Kokuru appears. He is holding a nice, neat, glowing box. In the memory, Alvin sits alone in the tavern with a gloomy expression on his face. Together in their hearts, a powerful desire flared up to find friends and assemble a team for adventures. Three women stand with serious expressions on their faces, and a shared purpose is felt in their gazes. Alvin anxiously talks about a dangerous boss on the 40th floor and his trap from which there is no escape. He proposes one option and anxiously searches the upper levels for clues that might help them in the raid. They can retreat, better prepare, and challenge the boss again another day. Or they could simply sell the map and information and wait for someone else to win. He gently emphasizes that they can always choose these safer options if they want. The group stands like a silhouette against the huge wall, facing the crucial question to go forward or retreat. Kokuru shifts the decision onto Alvin's shoulders, first asking him to express his opinion. He freezes for a moment, his face distant and thoughtful, weighing the full weight of their choice. Alvin admits that all of this is an impossible dream for him. He is filled with gratitude for having found a company better than he ever hoped for. His hand clenches into a determined fist as he prepares to make his final choice. He resolutely declared that they must challenge the orbs right now. He explains that their negative skills cancel each other out, leaving only positive effects. Alvin insists this unique synergy is possible only when all four of them are together. Ted listens attentively, her face serious and fully focused on his words. Kokuru's gaze is calm and confident, clearly showing her complete trust in his assessment of their situation. Melina's eyes shine with determination. She is ready to hear the group's decision. They stand united, but each of their decisions hangs by a thread after his speech. Melina agrees she wants to see with her own eyes whether what they say about the drop boss is true. Tech says he has scoured everything he could and is ready to move forward with what they already know. Kokuru beams with a bright smile, says the matter is settled, and encourages them to move on. Alvin, always a cautious leader, asks Kokuru if she is absolutely sure about her choice. She decisively says, "I am a healer precisely because they need me." He looks at her with understanding, quietly acknowledging her selfless dedication to the party. His face darkens as he reflects on how fragile and temporary adventure groups can be. He thinks about trivial reasons, insults, quarrels, poaching, which break up groups. Leaves fall like a reminder of the inevitable passage of time and the changes it brings. He knows, even if he ends up completely alone, the world will keep turning and he will still have to survive. He cannot help but figure out the rumors about the item that enhances skills to secure his future. Alvin finally reveals his true motivation. He wants to find out if there is a way to erase negative skills. With a deafening groan, the massive, richly decorated doors to the boss's hall began to slowly swing inward. He throws all his weight into it, pushes the door, and an abyss of complete darkness opens. The team steps over the threshold with a firm, decisive crunch, fully entering the fight. They survey the unexpected clearing, and Alvin, bewildered by what he sees, falls silent. Inside they find a single colossal tree, and Kokuru immediately asks where the boss is. Tet nervously looks around, as if hinting that the boss simply has not appeared yet. She steps back fearfully in small steps. She noticed something creepy on the ground. Ted lets out a frightened scream, her face a mask of shock from what she saw. The ground is strewn with grotesque, pulsating growths that resemble exposed brains. The branches of the tree bend under the weight of bright, juicy fruits of the most diverse shapes and sizes. Melina asked if they had found Boso, and there was anxiety trembling in her voice. Kokuru made a nauseating sound. He was clearly sickened by this grotesque, organic landscape. Alvin finds what he sees creepy, and Ted is told to stop comparing the prickly fruit to entrails. He examines the variety of colors and shapes, wondering if these are the fruits of this monstrous tree. Suddenly behind them, the huge chamber doors began to close with a hiss, blocking their way. In Alvin's mind, thoughts raced the last chance to retreat before the doors closed completely. He hesitates to leave in order to revise their strategy after the appearance of this alarming information. But doubts dissipate, and he decisively says there is no reason to turn back. He reminds them that all negative skills have been neutralized, and they are more ready than ever. The team stands shoulder to shoulder as the door slams shut with a deafening bang. Alvin resolutely says that their path is only forward, and now only one thing remains: to defeat the boss. The ground splashed with black liquid, and a mournful voice rose from the puddle. The team became alert and raised the alarm, but Ted immediately understood. Most likely it is just a setup. The voice continues its strange monologue, while more black liquid splashes onto the ground nearby. The tense expression on his face is cautious curiosity as he scans the room for the source of the voice. He notices something moving in the tree trunk and shouts a warning to the others. Through the rustling leaves, a calm woman's face quietly emerges, as if grown from the tree. Her silhouette slowly rises from the foliage, while the voice whispers about despair. A huge, beautiful dryad towers before them, her presence filling the entire hall. Alvin admires her enormous size and recognizes her as a plant-type dryad. The dryad smoothly waved her hand, extending a branch covered with green leaves toward them. Ted wonders what she is going to do while the branch twists in the air. The branch throws a bright, moving image into the air before the party. They gasped as a brutal, chaotic scene of a great war unfolded before their eyes. Melina turned pale from shock and asks if what they see is a picture of war. Others also froze from the sudden, eerie vision of battle. Kakaru recalls the sacred scriptures that told of a great ancient war among humans. Ted is gripped by horror at the scale of the bloody massacre. He calls this place a true hell. Melina pretends it is just intimidation, but her trembling voice betrays fear. The vision of war fades, leaving the group standing and staring into empty space. The dryad with a sorrowful face mourns the disappearance of the rainbow on the battlefield. The withered one cries over the decay of her body, from which black liquid spurts. She admits she cannot stop constantly drawing eerie scenes of the ancient war. Closing her eyes, she says that this restless impulse is her reason to live. The team stands ready, and Ted asks if the real battle is finally beginning. Her face twisted into an evil smile, and she said that she needs colors. A wave of dark energy exploded, covered the chamber, and caught the travelers by surprise. Alvin notices that they are not taking any damage at all and thinks distrustfully, is this still just a scene? The team stands in the darkness, suspiciously watching the air around, unsure if it is safe. Ted warns if this is a trick, then the rules of the fight have already changed. Suddenly, a strange symbol appeared on Alvin's cheek end, a sharp pop sounded. Melina hesitates whether this is a debuff, then suddenly realizes her own skills attracted it. Kokuru is gripped by horror. Our cleansing magic is powerless against him. Shocked, Alvin asks in despair how they can fight at all under these strange conditions. The system message confirms the devastating rule. All their skills are now unavailable. The traveler finally understood. This is the true cruel trick of the dungeon. The voice of the dryad lists the colors of violence she seeks to weave into her art. Melina froze in shock. She had never heard of the rule that limits skills. Kokuru stands silently and contemplates a situation that has never happened before and is very dangerous. A similar but less harsh rule comes to mind. Back then only magic was sealed. The voice of the dryad continues her eerie mantra of despair and wails. Kokuru explains that last time they had hints, so they managed to prepare and took the necessary items. Addressing them with contempt, the dryad called them foolish children of humans. Ted exploded with outrage, shouting loudly over the obvious injustice of the situation. Alvin sharply takes the helm in his hands and orders the team to change tactics until they understand. Suddenly he realizes that he also lost passive skills, such as increased strength. Melina warns Alvin that the opening scene is about to end. The dryad utters the final, terrible promise to turn their deaths into her art. The boss, the Twilight Dryad mural maker, fully emerges and lets out a mighty roar. Alvin encourages his team, ordering them to hold the basics of the fight. The sword in his hands became unnaturally heavy, and he asks himself how much strength he has truly lost. A thick branch swiftly flew through the air and suddenly struck Alvin. The branch slaps a red fruit against the ground, a dirty, sticky plop. Flames burst from within, and Alvin suddenly realizes that he was never the real target. From the roaring flames emerged two terrifying fiery salamanders. Alvin instantly noticed. The boss is a summoner who relies on his minions. Ted excitedly suggests that the colorful fruits call monsters of the same color. Melina felt a line from the description surface in her memory, 5 colors of fruits and possibly one more, black. The group sighed with relief, discovering that they could still use magic for enhancements. Kokiru promised to strengthen them as much as possible, not caring at all about her mono. The team decides to pay no attention to the boss and focuses on her newly summoned minions. Alvin rushed into battle. His strikes hit the salamander. His sword still strikes against the creature's tough, scaly skin. He noticed that the monster's vulnerable spot is its snout and aims there, hoping to stun it. He lunged forward, believing that a strong enough blow would stun the monster. His attack failed. The blade helplessly struck the monster's defense with a dull sound. He does not stop chopping in the fight with the amazingly resilient creature. After a long struggle, he defeated the salamander and with a bitter feeling realized that he lacks strength. Ted urgently shouts to Alvin, careful, a fireball is approaching. Another salamander, near death, collapsed to the ground right in front of them. It spits a huge fireball directly at the unsuspecting Alvin. Alvin catches the moment and instinctively raises his sword to deflect it aside. Muscle memory screams in his head, use the parrying skill to deflect the attack. A terrible realization makes him freeze. He suddenly asks himself, what am I doing? A fireball crashes into his sword and fiercely throws him back in a fiery explosion. The second salamander rushes forward to attack the now defenseless Alvin. He is sure the next attack will hit him. The dagger flashed in the air, becoming a blurred streak rushing toward the monster. Ted's dagger plunges into the salamander's head, saving Alvin from the blow. Ted apologizes, admitting that his daggers don't work very well, but Alvin is sincerely grateful. Alvin suddenly realized he forgot that parry is a skill he can no longer use. One drop of water falls to the ground, and circles spread in the small puddle. The company suddenly notices puddles of water emerging from the ground and bubbling around them. A colossal geyser burst from the ground. A column of water tossed the salamander high into the sky. Melina screams in shock as the sudden explosion throws the monster into the air. The creature crashes back to the ground with a roar, defeated by the blow. Alvin says he couldn't throw it far, his own skills were neutralized. Tet quietly contemplates the grim consequences of his current trouble. He asks if this rule is the reason why all the other adventurer groups lost. Alvin agrees and says that stealing high-level skills from an adventurer is like clipping a bird's wings. Kokiru heals the squad. Her supportive magic is as fast and reliable as ever. Her face shows calm concentration as she casts healing spells. Tet notices that thanks to Kakar's efforts, their stats are returning to normal. Although Kokiru is effective, anxiety still gnaws at her. She insists the team be cautious. Melina probes Alvin intently. What does he know about roles in adventures and tactics? He admits having played solo for a long time, he knows almost nothing about healers. Melina explains that buffs during healing also attract enemy aggression, not just deal damage. Ted understands well, if too many buffs are applied, Kakaru will become an easy target. Another branch crashed down, this time carrying a green fruit that splattered upon impact. Two giant, grotesque old mandrakes burst out from underground. Tet looks admiringly at their incredible size, but Alvin shouts for him to wait. Go to the worst, just one. One of the man's rakes suddenly lunged forward and grabbed the surprised Ted along with his roots. Two huge insect-like eyes of the creature fixed their gaze on the captured prey. Kokiru from the books recalls, the first roar of the mandrake is a close-range attack. Alvin shouts in panic that its roar instantly turns people to stone. Without hesitation for a moment, he pushed Ted beyond the blast zone. A blinding flash of energy from Mandrake's roar engulfed the entire world. The colossal force of the sound explosion shatters the very ground beneath them. After everything, Alvin falls to his knees. His body has become a gray stone. The warrior Alvin struggles to stand up and silently acknowledges how difficult this battle has become. Ted and Melina, his companions, notice everyone's movements have become sluggish and weak. Alvin rises, not allowing this new challenge to defeat him so easily. He understands, as long as they only cry over what was stolen from them, victory cannot be achieved. The group stands before two terrible mandragoras, and defeat seems inevitable. Alvin feels his health points slowly recovering, all thanks to Kakuru's constant healing. He carefully checks his wounded shoulder and notices with relief that it still moves. He remembers how he was struck with brutal force, his head hitting a solid stone wall. He grimly agrees. After such a direct blow, it was impossible to come out unscathed. Kakuru calls him, her voice trembling with concern for his injury. Alvin forces himself into a calming smile, insisting that he is a strong guy and everything will be fine. Her anxious expression melted into relief when she admitted that she was focused only on chanting mantras. The warrior in armor Alvin looked at his companion and asked, "Isn't her role obvious?" He enthusiastically praised her for closely monitoring his HP to always be full, calling her a wonderful healer. The blonde healer Kakaru closes her eyes with a calm smile and quietly agrees. She simply and sincerely thanks him for his encouraging words. They stand shoulder to shoulder before the formidable, toothy maw of the fallen monster. Alvin turned to his other comrade Theta and apologized for abandoning him earlier. Ted cheerfully waved off the apologies, saying otherwise he would have been crushed. From afar, Melina called Alvin, anxiously asking, "Are you okay?" Alvin grits his teeth, grind irritably. His weapon skills are sealed and do not allow him to deal great damage. Tetz rushes alongside him, shouting a new strategy from his days of fighting alone. The voice of the young adventurer explains that this is exactly how he managed on his own. He strikes the monster's maw with a powerful kick, and it staggers dazedly. Ted encourages his friends, relax and try everything that comes to mind. He reached into the pouch on his belt and pulled out a small square object. With a heavy groan, he throws the object directly at the staggering monster. The object flies straight into the gaping maw of the creature, with a row of sharp teeth. Suddenly, a huge explosion roars, and Ted proudly exclaims that one monster is down. Alvin loudly praises his own cleverness. Intended Metsu was a joke he invented. One monster is already down, the squad turns to face the last one. A slender hand with sharp nails points at Thema's sign of a new treacherous attack. A leafy branch swayed eerily, as if sinister life had awakened within it. A wave of living vines and leaves rushes across the ground straight at the company. Vines crackle and rise, tearing from the earth in search of a target. Alvin notices the danger and desperately shouts a warning to the unsuspecting Theta. Suddenly, the vines grab Theta. They tightly wrap around his arms, legs, and torso. He struggles, gasping for breath, issuing an instinctive but futile plea to break free from the bonds. The last wooden monster looms over its captured, helpless prey, ready to strike. Kokuru raises her hand, her face showing fierce, unwavering concentration. A stream of dazzling fiery magic envelops the monster and the tightening bonds. Alvin rushes away from the fierce fire, his face a mask of determination. The force of the magical explosion pushes Theta. He harshly crashes to the ground. The group rushes to Tetsed while he struggles to stand again. He apologizes, irritated, because in the heat of battle he forgot that his ability to escape was sealed. Melina raises her eyes to the main street and surveys the aftermath of the attack. She notices that the green branches that attacked them are now retreating. Melina wonders aloud, is it because they defeated the green fruit monsters? Alvin notices that this did not happen with the red monsters, so there was some order here. Kokuru points to the next fruit, a large blue one that is starting to crack and open. From the shattered blue fruit emerges a huge and formidable ice golem. Alvin and Ted are stunned. This time, only one monster appeared. Alvin realizes this golem is much stronger than any they have faced before. Goblin instantly unleashes a destructive barrage of explosive attacks from afar. Alvin shouts loudly for everyone to stay away from the continuous explosions. The relentless attack forces the squad to constantly scatter and dodge. Ted proposes a new plan for how he and Melina will fight from a distance against Golemeta. Alvin agrees without hesitation, telling Ted that he will leave it in their hands. Ted tells Alvin to take a pause and immediately run to join Melina. Alvin watches as Ted rushes at the golem, feeling as if he has been taken out of the fight. He is large in size, deciding that this is the perfect time to review their strategy. Alvin understands well, continuing like this won't work, a new plan must be devised. Kokrum insists that the skills unavailable feature is pointless and that there should be hints. Suddenly, a memory flashes in Alvin. He recalls several fragments of a mysterious text. He feels that he must carefully reread the exact words of the flavor text they found. Suddenly, he remembers. Melina has been diligently keeping notes about their journey all along. A deafening bang makes him wonder if the others have already won this clash. The explosion raises a thick cloud of dust that obscures the battlefield. Melina realizes with horror that the enemy has only a tiny fragment of life left. Elvin screams in panic for someone to move away from the line of fire. A colossal crystalline hand thunderously crashed down, and Melina bitterly regretted miscalculating the damage. A sharp crystal growth crashes down with a stunning, unstoppable speed. Alvin Lipson, his sword met the powerful attack with a loud clatter. He shouted to his partner to leave the close combat to him. In another corner, Tet engages in a fierce fight with a smaller one-eyed robot. Kokuru shouted, "Alvin," and immediately cast a buff on him that pierces physical resistance. Elvin noticed the buff when an ethereal imprint of a palm appeared above his hand. He channels all his strength and pushes his blade through the monster's tough defense. Alvin's face is a mask of sharp concentration as he unleashes his powerful strike. He stands victorious amid the scattered fragments of that formidable crystalline creature. Melina approaches from behind and sincerely thanks him for the timely intervention. She apologizes she miscalculated the damage, forgetting that her skills that enhanced characteristics had disappeared. Elvin gently smiled and calmed her. That's what parties are for. Melina looks at him. Her expression softens. His words of support touched her. She thought to herself how amazing it is that he can say such saccharine phrases. Elvin asks Melina if she has recorded all the atmospheric descriptions for dungeons. He lined in, urgency in his gaze, and demands to see her notes right now. Melina is embarrassed and irritated by his sudden strong outburst of emotions. Tet jokingly teases her, imagining what secrets her notebook might hide. Sighing with irritation, Melina reluctantly agrees to his request. She hands him the book and says the needed pages are marked with a leaf. When he takes the book, she quietly adds also to catch his attention. Her face darkens and she throws a grim threat. Do not look at any other page. Melina sharply grabs the curious Tet and sternly tells him not to peek, while Kokuru warns about the next attack. Frightened, Elvin cannot comprehend. What secrets does this book hide to cause such a threat? He carefully opens the book, vowing to himself not to look at any other page. He finds the passages he was looking for. Elvin admits to himself that he was ready to dismiss these texts as unimportant. In the text, like a sad legend, it is told how abilities wither with age, like in old adventurers. He connects this with their current predicament. In battles, they lose skills and stats. He says with relief, fortunately, Kokoro has an incredibly high level, so she is an exception. Immersed in thought, Elvin convinces himself that the first half of the text is quite logical. He firmly believes that the answer to their struggle is hidden in the illegible second half. He sinks deeper into the dark abyss in his head, trying to connect all the scattered clues. He questions the intentions behind the design of Dungeon's strange color-coded. Reaching toward the distant light, he desperately asked why they are being tested so much. A sharp sound and a flash of insight forcefully throw him back into reality. He lifts his eyes from the book, frightened and confused by the sudden noise. While he was distracted, a swarm of giant spiders suddenly attacked their group. Melina and Tet watch, their faces filled with pure, genuine horror. Elvin scolded himself for relaxing immediately after that passionate speech about teamwork. He notices a tree branch crackling with yellow energy, then sees Kokoro on the ground. The yellow branch, a cane struck by lightning, splits with a loud crack. Elvin's face became a mask of pure bewilderment due to this sudden turn of events. On the ground below, Kokoro lies motionless, while electric arcs spark around her. Someone's voice burst into a scream. He shouted Koko's name while she lay unconscious. Suddenly, two huge black spiders appeared, and Alban had no idea what was happening. He shouts loudly at the spiders to stop as they loom over Kokoro. On Elvin's face is pure panic, and he warns them in response. He realizes that her high level was supposed to make Kokoro completely unreachable. The spider roared at the moment. They threw Koko, the one who was farthest from death. Elvin's eyes widened in absolute horror when he saw that gruesome sight. Like a cold ghost of death looming over the defenseless body of Kokoro. Casting aside thoughts of levels, Elvin rushed forward with a primal roar. He desperately lunges, his face contorted with effort, reaching for her. His companions froze in complete shock, eyes wide open, watching the incredible sudden rescue. In a dizzying whirl of movement, Elvin grabs Kokoro at the last moment before impact. He lands, holding her protectively in his arms amid clouds of dust. Dropping to one knee, his burning determination melted into tender care for her. He understands that her life is so delicate and fragile, despite her strength. Pressing her to himself, he silently vows to protect her, no matter what. The narrative rewinds and shows how the group tensely stands guard before the ambush. One of the adventurers notices a rustle in the thick foliage nearby. Another voice points to an alarm hiding deep in the leaves. A terrible swarm of electric spiders poured out onto the clearing. Kokoro voices her disgust at the creepy number of monsters. She instantly worries about Alvin. Her heart tightens with the question, is he okay? Alvin stands with his back turned, so engrossed in reading a small book that he pays no attention to anything else. Kokoro, with growing concern, notices that he is completely absorbed in reading. She shouts loudly for him to look ahead, but it is already too late. From the bushes, a dazzling lightning bolt shoots swiftly toward her. The electric shock hits her directly, and she realizes she cannot move. She understands that she has been paralyzed and that the spiders deliberately targeted her. Falling, she hears Alvin's panicked voice from afar. A sharp sound and her body went limp in the fall. She couldn't stop the fall. She fears that upon landing she will suffer a fatal injury. Confused, she feels herself being covered by one strong, all-encompassing embrace. Numb from paralysis, she catches herself thinking, is it Alvin who is hugging her? She realized that this must be a comforting hallucination in her last moments. Alvin opened the antidote bottle goblin to cure her paralysis. He carefully pours the potion into her. It emits a barely noticeable soft light. Kokuru sneezes powerfully, and the paralysis instantly disappears. Embarrassed, she covers her mouth with her hand and exclaims in surprise, Elvin. He asks if she is okay. She assures him that there are no serious injuries and thanks him. Alvin sincerely apologizes he got distracted in the middle of all this chaos. She quietly calms him down, assuming that he is lost in some important thoughts. Inside, he felt, his skill against paralysis does not work. Kokuru admits she was wrong too, she just forgot about it. She teasingly mocks him, I will get angry if you only think about food. She says to him with a gentle smile that everything is fine. Confidence returned, and she vows to fight paralysis with timely reinforcements. Elvin returns to the fight, his face is focused and ready again. Kokuru watches him go, while her other companions approach and stand beside her again. She blushed and sighed with relief. He did not guess that she was conscious the whole time. After that horror, her friends Melina and Ted come up to her. Melina giggles at her friend's embarrassment and says how little she almost got injured. Melina exhaled with relief. Kokuru is finally okay after the attack. Tet questions Melina's actions, but she calmly defends her choice. Melina admits she had a backup plan to soften Kokoru's fall with magic. She seriously noticed Alvin's intensity and was convinced it was all because of Kokoro. After giving the last warning, Melina and Ted rushed into battle again. The team continues to desperately fight the last spiders. Kokuru clutches her chest and blushes as she realizes the depth of Alvin's heroism. Ted finishes off the last spider. It crumbles into tiny particles of light. Elvin says they are so busy with summons that they cannot harm the main boss. Tet sincerely wants to find a way to put an end to the endless summons. Another purple spot emerges on the ground. It heralds the next wave. The ground hums, the purple tremor foretells the appearance of a new threat. 3 menacing armors of poisonous steel emerge from the murky earth. A tied branch slides across the ground. Its challenge is already over. Branches watch tensely as something is pulled from the ground, then retreat. Alvin guessed they found themselves in a poisonous swamp. He reassures them, assuring that their potions will protect them from the swamp's poison. Melina warns of a devastating piercing attack that could seriously hit their HP. Alvin takes the initiative and vows to keep 2 knights in armor occupied. Unshakable confidence reads on his face. He prepares to rush into battle with formidable enemies. He pondered, usually this would be a very simple matter for him. His eye narrows, he feels the situation is completely different. He dashed forward and engaged in hand-to-hand combat with 2 knights in silver armor. He notes with a rasp in his voice, bodily injuries are almost absent, but moving is difficult for him. Without his skills, he realizes he must act a whole step faster. He shouted and instinctively tried to parry, but the skill was sealed. His attempt fails, and the force of the blow pushes him back. He staggers backward. He screams in pure despair, unable to use any of his skills. One of the armors knocked his legs out from under him in the mud. He crashes with a thud into the slippery, viscous ground of the poisonous swamp. The knight, without any emotion, orders him to get back on his feet. Confused, he struggles with his thoughts, trying to understand what he can do now and what he cannot. At the last moment, he stands up again and meets another attack rushing at him. He stands opposite the Silver Knight, and on his face is a tense, strained expression. When their blades clashed, he suddenly realized that he did not remember that night at all. A dark figure appears behind his back, and an ominous rustling of a blade is heard. The Black Knight delivers a deadly stab into his completely unprotected back. A powerful attack cuts through the battlefield and flies straight at Elvin. The strike hits, he screams, more than half of his health instantly disappears. He falls in the swamp. It is almost impossible to find footing. Melina rushes to him from afar, on her face pure anxiety. Her eye is wide open, in it a burning focus and fierce determination as she runs. Another knight descends on Alvin's wake, and he shouts in utter disbelief. His HP is critically low, and he knows he won't survive another hit. He quickly considers options, none fit. A single tear rolls down his cheek as he realizes he can do nothing to escape. The knight in armor rushes forward. A powerful rumble emphasizes her advance. Kneeling, Elvin feels a selfish desire about him in his head. His face distorted with despair, he so wanted to parry the incoming strike. He understands how much time he wasted in sorrow, never appreciating his other powerful skills. With humility, he accepts this, because he believes that without his abilities, he is helpless. A sudden memory surge, a sharp gaze cuts through his despair. The voice of his master roars in his head, ordering him to stop whining and train. The blade deflects another, a sharp clang of steel on steel echoes. Galvanized Elvin crouches into a low, strong stance, sword at the ready. Memory prompts him to hold the blade at a shallow angle to deflect the strike. When their blades clashed, the voice commanded him, "Do not tense, move with the strike." He is reminded to shift his feet and maintain balance throughout the movement. The final lesson seems to command the body to move on its own, relying only on pure instinct. His perfect parry makes the knight stumble, revealing a shining core. Stunned by his own success, Alvin cannot understand what has he just seen. A voice urgently warns him, do not lose focus at this crucial moment. A weak spot is revealed, a magical circle hidden in the torso of the armor. A close-up shows an intricate, glowing symbol on the breastplate of the knight. As the armor was reassembling, Alvin lunged forward, aiming at the newly discovered core. This fierce clash suddenly takes him back to the days when he was young and dreamed of becoming a swordsman. A flash of memories reveals his youth's endless training swings and constant shouts directed at him. Young Alvin grumbles, why bother practicing these strange blocking angles at all? The master barked at him, parrying blows, that's the whole point. The master explains what changes when the body instinctively knows the movements. Shouting fiercely, he ordered the boy to stop complaining and train. Young Alvin stylishly brushed him off and sarcastically asked if it was really that simple. The master's patient suddenly grimaced, his face turned into a mask of caricatured, smoldering anger. He barked that he was tired of the boy's rudeness and swung his tool. The tool struck the boy's clumsy block with a sharp, echoing click. The young Alvin's eyes widened in shock. He realized the master was truly serious. The master's gaze gloomy and full of instructional determination. The straw whip slapped the boy on the head, a painful physical lesson. The master says, the enemy simply will not stop if you do not fight back. Now the battlefield is strewn with the shattered armor of the defeated. Alvin understands, his strength is not only in skills, he also has a weapon. The last enemy in heavy armor falls to the ground with a loud clang. With a quick movement, Alvin notices that only one hole remains. When he fights, he feels as if years of accumulated practice are engraved right into his very body. Finally, he understood his master's lesson and executed a perfect low strike. The last enemy fell from a clean hit amid the clatter of armor. Victorious, he stands proudly, once again uttering his name and feeling a new understanding. He turns to his comrades, stumbling over words, trying to express his insight. The comrades rushed to the place of his victory, captivated by the triumph and completely unaware of what was happening in his thoughts. He tries to get their attention, he wants to share what just happened. With an impatient look, he asked if they saw his incredible maneuver. His friends admit, during the fight, each was absorbed in their own task. Depressed, Elvin realizes he does not know how to explain what he did. They misinterpret his silence. They worry that he is injured and press him to finish the fight. He freezes for a moment, immersed in quiet reflection. With a soft rustle, he sheathes his sword. The decision is made. He stands together with his comrades over the last fallen summoned creature, ready to speak. Turning to them with a warm smile, he said to everyone, listen carefully. The comrades look at him, a mixture of doubt and curiosity is read on their faces. With unwavering confidence, he declared that they can win this battle. They looked at him, questioning his sudden and unexpected confidence. Melina points out that they are barely coping and hardly dealing any damage to the main boss. Elvin glanced at the main boss, a calm, dry advertisement, and began his analysis. He assumes that the dry skull will not move until all its summons are defeated. He understands this is the key that opens the way to the next phase of the battle. He finally realizes they have been fighting all this time because they never even had a minute to analyze. Ted loudly voiced their shared frustration. Lack of skills knocked them off track. She bitterly says that it was their skills that initially made them adventurers. Elvin quietly confirms that he once thought exactly the same. He firmly says that he no longer believes in it. His companions hold their breath and listen attentively as he prepares to explain his new philosophy. He energetically lists his efforts, relentless training, studying, and constant application of knowledge. With a sly smile, he reminds Teet that she herself said he can do everything. The sudden playful reminder leaves Ted speechless for a moment. Elvin gently soothes her and honestly admits that he envies Tetsun Kane's fighting instincts. Ted acknowledges that Elvin's skill is the result of constant trial and error, and he sincerely respects that. Alvin turned his praise to Kacker and whispered with admiration that she is incredible. He enhances her impeccable sense of timing with a variety of spells. He also enthusiastically praises Melina for her attentive eye to details and huge arsenal of spells. Melina blushes and shyly insists that she only does what is expected of her. Alvin enumerates his obvious treasures, high levels, rare items, and learned spells. He insists that their true power is born from effort, learning, and hard work. Close-up of the eyes, they have unwavering, resolute confidence. He claims that it is personal skills that make them true adventurers. Watching them all stumble and make mistakes, he finally understood the description in dungeons. He realized dungeons were made to test exactly these skills of his. The hints were there from the very beginning, otherwise it wouldn't have been a real test. He understands the only chance to win is to use what remains when skills disappear. He recalls those days of misfortune and wonders why he simply didn't quit these adventures. It turned out the answer was his childhood dream, to find friends and set out on adventures. He did not give up because he had not yet accomplished what he had planned. He never gave up. Instead, he worked in a way to be proud of what he does. An automatic parrying skill emerges in memory, a skill he should not have been able to use. He clenches his fist, understanding that the system rewards those who put in effort. Suddenly, he is pierced by a powerful and deep insight. He declares that they have all endured so much and worked much harder so they cannot lose. In a quiet clearing, the team stands over the fallen enemy. T-Boss, a boss without skills, is not a problem for her at all. Melina notices that there have been no brutal attacks in the fight so far that kill instantly. She admits that she thought Alvin had lost his mind, but now sees he was right. She jokingly asks to get her notes back, and Alvin assures that he behaved well. Kokiru smiles warmly, and in that smile her complete trust in Alvin, without any hesitation. Four friends stand together, shoulder to shoulder. Their joint work gives them the skills they need. Alvin confirms that now they are all on the same wavelength. With renewed determination, he encourages them again and leads them back into battle. From above, you can see the team returning to the battlefield to face the boss again. Kokiru Haltelvin insists persistently that they must first discuss their strategy. She still does not know how they can truly harm the main boss at all. Ted suddenly intervened with an idea he is going to test his theory. The weapon flies through the air, aimed directly at the calm, withered boss. It vainly clings to the flickering hexagonal barrier surrounding it. Alvin realizes with horror that the boss is completely invulnerable to any direct attacks. He suggests instead attacking the branches of the bushes that have just begun to sprout. Kokiru notices the branches retreating sharply, leaving only a narrow gap. The diagram shows defeat the summoned and the branches flee. The illustration shows only branches, nowhere a single summoned monster. The second diagram clearly shows if you ignore the calls, the branches will remain open and vulnerable. Tet recalls how the purple branch created a swamp and immediately disappeared. A brief flash of memory. Alvin slips into the sticky, poisonous swamp. The partial diagram confirms the purple branch retreats instantly. The full scheme shows in detail how each colored branch affects behavior. Look closer and you will see what elemental properties are hidden in each color. Another angle shows the colors one by one. Tet grimaced, remembering the green branches, annoying climbing vines that bound. Ted suggests that by hitting the connected branches, you can wound the boss. In the memory, Alvin knows the fight must continue even when the summoned falls. Alvin asks if his team is ready and immediately hears a stormy, enthusiastic yes. He sincerely thanks for the chance to think through the strategy together. Drew out the sword and declared with a challenge, the real battle begins now. He dramatically thrusts the sword into the ground, full of determination. The women are puzzled, but one suddenly notices that the main boss is changing. The dryad's face cracks as she calls them annoying children of humans. Her entire figure withers and becomes covered with wrinkles, as if she is instantly aging. Tet desperately shouts a warning to Alvin, pointing upwards. High in the tree crown, two fruits of different colors are visible. The green and yellow fruits begin to swirl and mix. A huge lightning discharge tore across the entire battlefield. From the energy explosion emerges a monstrous electrode cactus. Melina explains her attack, a huge wave of paralyzing needles. Tet decides to keep track of time himself and immediately feels his body is swelling. This is his warning. She confirms they have only 60 seconds until the attack. Ted notices a green branch of a bush and points to it to Alvin. Alvin suddenly notices nearby a yellow branch emerging. Melina warns approaching the cactus is too risky. Kokuru whispers a spell, a wave of energy, covers the whole team and grants resistance to paralysis. Alvin decides the green branch will be first, they will target it and destroy it. Tet rushed forward with a battle cry and struck the branch with all his might. They confirm that the branches are suitable targets and feel new confidence. Their relentless attack on the thick, leaf-covered branch continues. Alvin Zane squinted, feeling that something was wrong. He tells the puzzled Tet that it seems this is not working. From afar, Melina watches and wonders what is happening to them. She says that the branch shouldn't be this strong. They are pulling for too long. She realizes that the main boss is probably slowly healing the branch. Understanding the delay, a chill froze in her chest. This is a bad turn of events. Tech grumbles about the healing, and Elvin says it's a fair game. The voice announced, 30 seconds remain. They have to manage to deal more damage than the healing can heal. The whole group is shocked at how little time they have left. The cactus monster begins to swell, preparing for its massive attack. Kokuru orders to retreat, but Alvin protests they will lose all progress. A close-up shows Melina's tense, vigilant facial expression. Melina decisively orders her comrades not to stop and to keep attacking. Ted counts down rapidly, and the cactus releases a real storm of needles. She screams from the pressure, but Melina pushes her further. A storm of needles crashes down with a stunning, piercing force. Melina raises a huge, dark dome of magic over them to protect them. Elvin instantly notices her trick. She skillfully used gravity magic to deflect the attack. Under the shield's protection, Melina orders them to finish off the branches. Alvin roared, "I'm done with games," and smashed the branches. His attack directly wounds the main boss, who recoils in pain. Cactus instantly disappears, clear confirmation. Destroying the branches can defeat the summoned creature. Ted eagerly asked, "What next?" Melina replied, "Red and purple." A huge lava scorpion appears. It combines poison and fire. Kokuru shouts a new plan, ignore the purples and attack the reds. Another branch cracked, so even more monsters are approaching. A frozen Triant and tentacled slime appear on the field, tightly filling the space. The main boss lady still drips black sap from her wound. She thoughtfully considers that occupying them without killing requires time. Alvin and Kakaru both strive to find a more effective strategy. Melina announced with a smile, the next combination is yellow and purple. Kukuru notices one fruit detaching and rapidly falling from a high branch. At the last moment, he precisely calculates its trajectory just before it hits the ground. He threw the projectile of the fruit, splattered into a sticky, messy blot. The corresponding branch sharply retracts. Monster summon failed. Kokuru winks and confirms that the berry itself is the weak spot. Elvin is impressed and sincerely admits he could never make such a throw. In the second fruit lands, they summon a huge amethyst golem. Kokuru bitterly regrets not aiming at the purple fruit, but at the yellow one. Alvin sees a ray of hope. They impose the enemy with only one attribute. The team decisively decides to quickly send the golem and move on. Alvin knows they will need Kakura's buff that pierces physical defense. He glanced at his status, assuming that her enhancements would last the entire battle. To his surprise and horror, he sees the buff icon flicker and disappear, and then reappear a moment later, leaving him puzzled and disbelieving his own eyes. Dodging the attack, he swears he just saw it escape. Suddenly, a memory surfaces of how Coco said her buffs last on average. In Alvin's head, thoughts rush wildly as he tries to comprehend the stunning consequences. He shockingly realizes that her buffs are very short-lived. He understands she repelled their attempts with perfect, barely noticeable timing. He wonders she does this with every buff she applies. Like an ethereal vision, the image of Kokuru appears as he acknowledges her incredible skill. Inspired by her dedication, he decides to fight even more fiercely, Nenekwani. He returns to Melina and asks which fruit will be next. He sees in surprise how water magic is already swirling around her. He wonders how has she already managed to form a chain of spells. Her eyes are fixed on the tree canopy. She is waiting for the next drop. Alvin froze in shock when Melina released a powerful stream of water magic. 2 fruits falling were intercepted in the air by a powerful water spell. Ted sincerely praised Melina for the great shot, and 1 fruit splashed but without any damage. With a determined shout, Ted rushes forward to catch the second fruit. His blade cuts the second fruit, and it explodes into pieces. Elvin notices with relief. Their coordinated strike shook the boss, and he didn't even cast anything. Melina explains that hitting the weak spot with the appropriate element knocks him off his feet. Elvin suddenly realized Melina definitely knew that the next to fall would be the red fruit. Ted, admitting that he had no idea, asked Melina how she knew that. Melina explains their new strategy in detail, to fight only those monsters that have obvious weak spots. She asks Alvin if this new efficiency suits him. He, stunned, agrees. Ted tells Elvin to focus. He is their main damage dealer. Elvin is confused. The skill of his team is so incredible that it is frightening. Grinning widely, Tet fights the lizard-like monsters. Their attacks crack uselessly. The companions shouted a loud warning, "Be on guard." She tells Tet that they have reached an important threshold and he must remain vigilant. Kokuru and Melina looked up, and suddenly anxiety flashed across their faces. Kokuru Gas shouts a desperate warning about a threat from above. Large dark seed pods rapidly fall from the sky and thud against the ground. Tet scowls in irritation. During tests on patients, they were called annoying. From the tree emerges a terrifying figure and addresses them, children of men. Rotten dry valves, she adds them to stain her hands and get rid of them. Around the huge tree, the ground suddenly begins to crack and crumble into pieces. Huge, knotted roots burst out from under the ground with a deafening crash. Elvin and Ted staggered from the sudden cruelty of the people. Dryad settled on the roots and declares that she has found a new canvas. Tech loudly shouts a warning. The main boss finally enters. Alvin looks at the huge scale and feels as if they are fighting not an enemy, but the very room. A sharp predatory smile flashed on his face as soon as he noticed a chance. He announced that finally they can attack the main boss directly. Another squad member shouted a battle cry and rushed at the huge root. Tet tears forward and shouts that he will be the first to charge into the attack. His dagger cuts into the root, and from there bursts a fountain of black liquid. He recoils with disgust. The substance looked as if it were tree sap. The black mass spread on the ground in puddles, bubbled and twisted unnaturally. Alvin looks at the strange phenomenon with a face full of embarrassed anxiety. Silhouettes of new monsters begin to emerge from the dark liquid. Suddenly shadow wolves and ravens appear, and Tet apologizes for his mistake. Alvin smiles, realizing that the dark monsters signify the beginning of the final stage of the battle. He called Melina by name and ordered her to deal with the flying monsters. Melina confirmed with a determined smile that she would handle it. They decided to move towards Dryad, keeping the crowd as small as possible. The team fights in perfect harmony, together engaging in a clash with the shadow horde. Alvin breaks through forward, noticing that the number of monsters is impressive, but they are weak. He suddenly notices a narrow gap. The main boss is left without guards. He rushed forward, his blade cleanly cutting through a huge root. Black sap spurts out, but the torn root begins to bubble and regrow. As the root revives, Alvin stands and cannot believe his eyes. Shock suddenly freezes on his face. A new threat has appeared. A higher demon silently lands before him, a huge black panther. Alvin realizes before him is a real threat, attacking both magically and physically. Haydeman rushes at dazzling speed and sends Alvin flying backward. A powerful demon strike crashes down, but Alvin dodges. The golden, fierce eye of the demon glared from above at the struggling warrior. Again it lunges with a fierce biting attack that covers the entire shopping center. Alvin exclaimed in surprise, barely dodging the snapping jaws. He regains his balance again, grateful that he can read the opponent's movements. He enters the fight with the demon and feels as if he is starting his path anew. Relying on the basics, he thinks all he can do is swing the sword. He parries a fierce strike, his movements precise despite the intense pressure. The calm, understanding look of the mentor surfaces in his memory. The shining blade is like a mirror. It reflects his focus and all the lessons he has learned. His eyes are sharp, his face a mask of pure effort and concentration. Alvin lowers the sword, a powerful strike that shakes the ground. The wolf lunges at Ted parry, but is distracted by a scuffle nearby. He notices that all the effects from Alvin's strikes glow red. Ted is shocked, realizing that Alvin constantly lands critical hits. Alvin is shocked. How does he manage to land critical hits one after another? Ted flinched and turned around. He saw Melina with a staff ready. Close-up focuses on the triangular pattern decorating Melina's witch hat. Kakaru reproaches Tet, asking why he is just standing there, frozen. Tet apologizes and says that something strange is happening in Alvin's fight. A sinister sound cut through the air and grabbed his attention. His face changed, eyes wide open, and a full, helpless horror froze on it. A huge shockwave of black energy burst out, knocking the group off their feet. Melina was thrown to the ground, and in despair, she asks herself what kind of attack that was. She recognizes it as a shockwave that cannot be blocked, as if born from a demon of the abyss. Jagged, spider-like branches of dark energy crackle and grow. The team realizes their defensive skills will not withstand such direct hits. Ted, with dark humor, asks what they should do now. Kokoru calmly drinks a potion to restore mana and tells them not to worry. She explains that now she can foresee the attack and warn them. The team agrees on a new tactic to dodge the shockwaves. Coco raised her eyes upward and forward and asked what the main boss is. The skeletal boss placed the blade on his arm and cut himself. With a sharp and deliberate movement, it slices its torso. Thick black blood, like tar, splashed from the wound onto the ground. The headless knight on a phantom horse emerges from the black liquid. Ted smiles, hinting that the boss relying on the summoned creatures reveals his weakness. He declares the boss his target and rushes straight to his position. Surprise appeared on his face when his path was blocked. The primary horse suddenly crashes into Ted and instantly stops his advance. He is thrown back, his boots sliding on the rocky ground. Alvin grimly admits it seems impossible to reach the boss. Melina shouts about 3 shadow explosions approaching, and Alvin understands this. Tet flees, and Alvin himself throws himself into battle with a swarm of shadow wolves. Alvin thought that dungeons have their own logic, and monsters are never too strong. He is convinced that there is always a hidden weak spot, a way to defeat them. Once you find that weakness, victory comes by itself. That is the strategy. In a moment of clarity, he is brutally interrupted. Shadow tentacles entangle him. Mid-exploding earth, Alvin fights with full concentration against dark retender spiders. Suddenly, shadow power grabbed Alvin from behind. Anxiety froze on his face. A shadow figure with many hands wrapped around him, he burst out with a scream of disbelief. He, trapped, realizes with horror that his life force is being sucked out. Helplessly lifted, he decides to take the massive slash of dark energy head-on. A destructive wave of dark energy strikes him with stunning force. The blow hurls him and his comrades backward like helpless dolls. Lying motionless on the ground, a thin stream of blood reveals his wound. Carla looks with horror and shouts his name in panic. She sharply grabs Kokoru's arm, desperately trying to get the attention of her comrades. Kokoru looks worried, her staff glows, and she prepares to cast a spell. Barely conscious, Elvin Pants gasps heavily for air and weakly apologizes to Kokoru for his failure. Glowing like a spiderweb, the magical sign in the air begins to crack and crumble into small fragments. Carla's face became like a mask of shock as she watched the sigil break apart. She shouts a loud warning, 3 more explosions, get out of here. Despite the injury, Elvin rises to his feet with his last strength, his gaze stubbornly directed forward. Suddenly, understanding flashed across his face. He exclaimed that he had found it. Thoughts race. He realized that by focusing on evasion, he missed a key detail. In a moment of insight, the entire chaos on the battlefield suddenly pointed the way to victory. Ignoring the panicked cries of his comrades, he decisively rushed forward, trusting his newly arisen premonition. Like a blurred flash, he speeds through the ruined terrain with unwavering determination. He launches an attack before the headless knight, and a huge explosion occurs. The knight phantom steed rears up, frightened by the sudden powerful explosion. The knight retaliates with a powerful strike and knocks Elvin to the ground. The shockwave from the attack sweeps away another companion. He spins in the air. Pushing upward, Elvin's boots slipped on scattered stones as he recovered. He throws himself back into the fight, gracefully jumping over sharp cracks and torn terrain. From beneath the ground, slender, pale hands with long fingers ominously reach out. A terrible skeletal lick with long white hair bursts from beneath the earth. Yet still, Elvin found himself on a direct collision course with the monster in the air. His comrades watch as he soars toward the giant lick, sword at the ready. Approaching, he swings his sword with a powerful horizontal strike. A close-up shows his determined face, eyes wide open, full of intense focus. He gathers all his strength, and with one powerful, heavy blow strikes the lick in the head. His blade sank in with a disgusting squelch, and black energy splattered from the wound. The force of the blow sharply threw the lick's head back in agony. He reflects any talent, no matter how brilliant, will eventually fade. The dying lick gently touches his face and speaks of his unyielding simplicity. He again hears his master's words about the countless basic moves he was taught. A warm memory surfaces the face of his kind mentor, standing among other children. He recalls how his master explained that the skill of wielding a sword is based on fundamentals. The memory continues. The master gently tousles his hair and encourages him. The master's final lesson echoes in his heart. Never skip daily training, it will not fail him. Standing victorious by the spoils, he finally understood everything and thanked his master. He stands alone among the ruins, raising his gaze to the common shimmering light. Kakaro's voice calls his name, breaking the silence after the events. She rushes to him, worry and relief on her face. Overcome with emotion, she throws herself into his arms, grateful that he is alive. Kakaru scolds him for recklessness, while another friend feels victory through his praise. In the glow after the battle, the four of them stood together, realizing their victory. A quiet moment passes, and a new thought is born in his mind. His team eagerly surrounds him and demands that he tell how he used his skills. Elvin agreed to try and explain about stops as simply as possible. He explained that he can still parry even without using swordsmanship skills. His comrades look at him in response, their faces amusingly blank and not impressed at all. Suddenly Kokuru realizes where this is leading and asks, "Isn't this a sensation?" Alvin disagrees and thoughtfully says he is sure his master already knew. The group asks who taught him, and some swordsmen without sword skills. He explains how his master deflects blows with a hand movement and comes to help. He recalls how the master joked with a smile that maybe he would never truly understand his skill. Ted thinks he understood the essence, and Carla honestly admits she is still confused. Ted explains that it is like delivering a critical hit when the angle and timing perfectly coincide. Carla thought critical hits were a matter of chance, but Ted emphasizes, with Elvin they happen constantly. On the Tet's diagram, it is seen how flawless movement can reproduce the effect of skill. Then Carla asks, what is the value of skills at all if they can simply be copied? Alvin laughed and reassured her, don't worry, it will be hard to repeat that. He adds that the value of abilities is now clearer to him than ever before. He had not yet managed to explain when Ted excitedly points to the treasure chest that dropped from the boss. Their reward is a shiny ornate bow, glowing with a strange rainbow coloration. Elvin burst out laughing. How can a bow erase skills at all? He laughed heartily and dismissed the very idea that the ability to shoot is impossible. Ted emphasizes, if Elvin made the finishing blow, then the drop belongs to him. Elvin thinks gloomily, this is the first time he managed to kill a boss. Friends cheerfully insist that he deserved it and ask if he himself is sure about it. He stands apart from the group, lost in thought, and this makes them worried. He glances back at his friends, his face still distant and thoughtful. He examines the bow and feels its solid weight clearly for a high-level archer. He lingers on its powerful attributes, increased agility, several elements at once, and bonuses to negative statuses. Ted calls it a standard rare bow, and Carla notes that it could fetch a good amount of money. Elvin thoughtfully considers Bose's properties, his face still gloomy. He lets out a long, tired sigh. The burden of this moment weighs on him. Ted insists, just take the bow and see what happens. While examining it, Ted suddenly notices another hidden effect of this weapon. Melina leaned closer, filled with curiosity, and asked him, what did you find? Ted announces its name, Small Skill Seal, which disables one random skill. Kokuru is horrified, screaming that this side effect is simply terrible. Carla calls it a rare weapon with a drawback, and this surprised Kokuru. Kokuru looks completely confused by the term drawback weapon. Carla seriously says that sometimes, although rarely, a powerful weapon has its own catch. Ted adds that drawbacks mostly just reduce stats, not block the skill. The team corally lists their strange, never-before-heard negative abilities. Alvin Riley says that with this group, he discovered something new every day. Kokuru tests the bow, it disables her resistance to paralysis, and reveals its true nature. The team suddenly realizes, this is the very item that erases skills, but it is not at all what they expected. Carla Tesset was stunned. This weapon is reusable, anyone can take it in their hands. Ted tries it and grumbles that when some skill accidentally turns off, it's a real hassle. Elvin Tesset still doubted its value, even if it sealed his curse. Carla admits their dream of a permanent solution turned out to be just a fantasy. Tech awkwardly admits that despite his skepticism, part of him still hoped he was wrong. Four travelers stood together in silence, feeling the weight of their discovery slowly settling on their shoulders. Elvin looks at his friends as if to say, in the end, this is acceptable. Melina, filled with new enthusiasm, exclaimed that the mission was a huge success and proudly listed her achievements. She came to terms with the bitter truth. The item meant to enhance skills never existed. A gentle blush covers her cheeks as she focuses on what truly matters. She shines with a smile and says that the most important thing is to continue their adventures together. Her three companions froze, stunned by her sudden, heartfelt confession. Embarrassed, she explains that she spoke up because everyone seemed too lively. Carla clarified that what really upset her was being misled by rumors about the dungeon. Tedeggers exclaimed that it would be a shame to part ways now. He thoughtfully reflects on how a false rumor ironically created their unbeatable team. Elvin sincerely says that he wants to continue going on adventures with this team. Moved by their unity, Melina cried with joy, surrounded by smiling friends. Ted enthusiastically announces that they need to choose a name for the guild. He suggests a name related to the dungeon they have just conquered together. Melina thinks that Sunset Cave sounds too gloomy. They rack their brains over a good name, throwing out options: Sunset, Twilight, and Nightfall. Returning to the friends, Alvin suggests a new name, Dawn. He says the name was given to remind them of a text from another dungeon. He utters an inspired phrase about how the sun sets and rises again. Melina's face lit up with joy, and she exclaimed approvingly. Carlos sees a sign in this name, as if they are moving forward after sunset. Ted raised his finger, agreeing that this name hints at a bright future. Ted joyfully shouted a toast to the dawn of their new party daybreak. Ancient texts whisper that one sage believed their world is only a simulation. When Dungeon dematerializes, Elvin notices that it is about to disappear. Melina excitedly notices a rainbow living proof that the rules in their world are always predictable. The squad watches as a rainbow arc spreads over the dungeon entrance, and the entrance is already vanishing. The reflection suggests that here one can surpass the skills that control them here. Elvin sincerely admits it hurts him to see dungeons disappear, and he considers all that simulation side unnecessary. Carla eagerly asks where their next adventure awaits in this world. The newly gathered team walks side by side into the forest, heading towards their future. A month later, we find ourselves in a noisy tavern crowded with adventurers. Two excited women approach Elvin and enthusiastically say they saw him in the rankings. Someone impatiently takes his hand, rooting for him in his next big adventure. Slightly embarrassed, Elvin politely thanks them for their words of support. Women walk away, whispering about how cool and charmingly naive he is. Elvin approaches his waiting companions and apologizes for the delay. Ted did not waste time and immediately started teasing, calling him the famous leader of Daybreak. Carly admits their sudden rise to fame simply had to happen. Melina is torn between feelings but rejoices. The world finally sees his potential. Elvin advises his comrades to endure this attention, it will pass soon. He notes that the women at the party also have their admirers. Melina firmly states that she does not want to entertain any of her admirers at all. Carla irritably agrees when members of her former party now approach her. Tet says she has no idea where her former party members are now. Melina is shocked. Why would she even want to see those who abandoned her? Ted firmly says she will not accept any offer to return to her former party. Elvin quietly admits that he absolutely does not want to run into his old company. A sudden noise from the opposite end of the tavern startles Alvin and Melina. A desperate voice cuts through the clamor, shouting Albina's name. Elvin turns around, his face showing embarrassed recognition. Out of breath, Coron shouted that he finally found Alvin. Albin silently looks down at him, the air thick with tension. Corinne admits her mistake, and Ted dryly comments on his sense of timing. Elvin Coley says that now it is too late to apologize. Ted and Carla looked at Albin with admiration. His direct, pleasantly blunt refusal impressed them. In despair, Corinne grabs Elvin and begs for help, while his party falls apart. His hand grips Elvin's armor like a desperate call for help. Elvin fiercely waved his hand and shouted that Corinne is selfish. Alvin's new companions are completely stunned by his sudden outburst of rage. Guests in the tavern mistakenly take the tense scene for a lover's quarrel. Carla blushes with shame over the gossip and panically denies any romantic relationship. Teet apologizes, thinking that maybe she should have been more attentive. Filled with a strange, new determination, Carla vows that she will not lose. Elvin realizes with horror he has just caused such a misunderstanding that he will never be able to fix it. Corinne says that since Elvin left, his party has failed at everything. Elvin coldly asks about the others in the group, noticing Karen's plate. A flashback reveals how the former team suffered: injuries, lost equipment, and comrades who abandoned them. In the memory, Elvin tells his old comrades that they should be grateful that they are still alive. He told Karen to learn from his own mistakes and work hard to become better. Corinne insists that he really failed, and that is why he needs Alvin. He desperately shouts, asking if Elvin wants him to beg for help. Elvin's face twists with rage, and he firmly shouts, no. One of the comrades shouted to Alvin as the group decided to move. Carla tells him, we are leaving, finish your argument quickly. Melina looks at him with worry in her eyes and promises she will wait for him. Alvin looks down as his new company leaves the tavern. He tells Karan that his company is waiting for him and he needs to go. Karan asks one last time, promising to agree to any conditions just to get help. Alvin stops explaining the difference between innate talent and hard work. He explains that innate abilities cannot be changed, and this simplifies Karen's path. Elvin called Karen by name and, gathering himself, prepared to give his last advice. Karen raises her eyes to him and listens, sadness and quiet hope on her face. With a confident smile, Alvin advises him to hone what he already knows and start anew. The company walks through the city. Alvin lifts his head and gazes at the towering buildings. The panorama reveals the roofs spread across the city, and above them, pigeons calmly soar.